Okay, what I'm going to do is showcase you and me. Okay. And restream is going to be.
Can we test our 2-camera setup over here?
Yes.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Take a look at this. Come over here.
Recast.
Take a look at this one. So you see up here, it's a select camera. You can hit that and it'll change the next camera. Okay. You got this. All right. Nick, here, come over here real quick. Let's take a look at one sheet. This is what they're going to do. This is what we're going to be seeing. And Julian, this is where you can switch cameras. This is what everyone's going to see, right? Then Julian, you can choose the camera. As we're talking about the pool, it changes to that.
Awesome.
And then whenever you
Okay, so we're going to have to stop the screen share for a moment. Yeah, so we can go ahead and get started.
All right. Good to go?
All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I would ask who folks that are not spotlighted at the moment, if you could just mute your screen. I am Crystal Jackson. I am the Executive Secretary for the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division 330 in Washington, D.C., part of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. I'm also the... Welcome. I would ask who folks that are not spotlighted at the moment, if you could just mute your screen. I am Crystal Jackson. I am the Executive Secretary.
Okay, someone is listening at the same time we're airing, so we just need everybody to mute themselves because it's going to be a delay. Yeah, okay, I think we're good now. Go ahead, Sister Crystal.
Okay. And I'm also the First Assistant Secretary General of the UNIA ACL.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me see who's not muted and try to mute them. Y'all forgive me, but we can't.
Okay, someone is listening at the same time we're airing. So
if all the panelists, if you don't mind, please mute yourselves, everyone. Just hit mute.
Yeah, okay, I think we're good. Now go ahead.
Crystal, go through the gallery and you can mute those who are not muted yourself. You should be able to do that.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me see who's not muted and try to mute them. Y'all forgive me.
It won't let me mute people for some reason.
And okay, someone is...
Wait a minute, maybe it will. Let me see.
Someone is listening at the same time we're airing. So don't mind, please mute yourselves, everyone. Just hit mute. Yeah, okay, I think we're good now. Go ahead, Sister Crystal. Go through the gallery, and you can mute those who are not mute yourself. You should be able to do that.
Okay, I muted everybody. Crystal, go ahead and unmute yourself and get started. I muted everyone.
If all the panelists, if you don't mind, please mute yourselves, everyone. Just hit mute. Yeah, okay, I think we're good now. Go ahead, Sister Crystal. Go through the gallery.
Crystal, that's not coming from you, is it?
I don't think so, but let's see.
I don't hear it anymore right now.
Hello?
Okay.
All right. So go ahead, Crystal. Let's get started. You can start over. I think we're okay now.
Crystal, it's Jean Garvey. I'm in, I think.
Greetings. It's so good to have you, Mrs. Garvey. How are you?
I am very well, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Good, good.
Okay.
Are we ready to start?
We are ready to start. We just want to make sure that folks are muted.
All right. I think we're good to go.
Can you see me?
So if you could bring your camera down just a little bit.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's better.
All right. Okay.
I can see you.
All right.
Can you
Good.
see me?
I think we've gotten through the technical difficulties. And yes, we can see you, Mrs. Garvey. It's so good to have you on. In fact, we have quite a few wonderful guests on today.
The audio is very low. Let me see if I can make it a little louder. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you. Okay, so now I think we can get started. No more reverberations. It's time to go live. And again, okay, so I'm Crystal Jackson. I am the Executive Secretary for Division 330 of the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division of the UNIAACL. I'm also the First Assistant Secretary General for the entire UNIAACL. And with me, we have Reverend Mark Thompson, also known as Matsamela Mapfuno. And would you like to say a few words as our co-host?
Just want to say I'm honored to be here in the presence with the Garvey family and honored to pay tribute and participate in this 40-day Ascension ceremony for our dear brother Marcus Garvey Jr., someone who I got to know over the years, and someone, whenever we brought him to Washington, D.C., he always packed the house. He was our generation's direct connection to his father and his great legacy. So I'm honored to be here, and honored to be here as well with some other very distinguished individuals and dear friends who we'll be hearing from throughout the afternoon on the program. Thank you for having me, Sister Crystal.
It's great to have you. So what we're going to do is we're going to get started with our Ethiopian Anthem, and that's going to start our program off. We have a very wonderful program lined up for you today. We have special guests, Nana Kwabena Brown. We have Kevin Orlando of Pure Elegance. We have Lion Blyden, our Minister of Information. We have our Second Assistant President General, Raymond Duguay. We have our Secretary General, Brenda Amoakan, First Lady President of Division 401, Tanaya Scott, as well as several other guests that we'll have later on in the program, and we'll introduce them. We want to welcome Mrs. Jean Garvey, who's also with us today, and our President General of the UNIAACL, Michael Duncan, who's with us. And so we're going to get our program started.
We'll open, I believe, with libation with Nana Kwabena, correct?
No, we'll start with the funeral.
Oh, I'm sorry, slides. I'm sorry. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, I believe we'll have Nana Kwabena, correct? From the Temple of Nyame, our dear brother, Nana Kwabena Brown. Nana Kwabena, please. Unmute yourself, brother. Nana Kwabena, we still can't hear you. You're unmuted, but it doesn't seem your mic is on. All right. Well, we want to, Nana Kwabena, we'll give you an opportunity to see if you can see how to turn on your microphone. You are unmuted, but your mic's not picking you up. So why don't we move on and then come back to Nana Kwabena. Is oh, is that you? Yeah, I think we have you now. Yes.
Okay, yeah, my younger sister here is helping me out here.
All right. It's a little bit of an echo, but I think we'll get through it. So let's go ahead and try. Let's go. Well, we had you, but we lost you again. Whatever he did before, tell him to do that again, because we heard you. Then it went away again.
How about now?
If you have a window open that's streaming the service, close that one. Don't have that playing and just have his mic on. All right. Well, why don't we come back and we'll see if we can work that out, because there's something going on. Is brother Kevin? Are you here? You ready to go, brother? Is my God brother ready? Kevin, you ready, brother? All right. So we have brother Kevin, my God brother. Brother Kevin Miller. Kevin is going to share with us Lift Every Voice and Sing. Kevin, you have it, brother. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
I think we can hear you, but there's still an echo coming from somewhere. Go ahead and try to say something, Nana Kwabena.
Huh?
Yeah, you still got an echo there.
We're gonna close this one down and just use this one.
Okay.
You can log out again.
Okay, what about now?
You got an echo still, but let's give it a try. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I raise my hand up as I give honor to Almighty God. I drop my hand down to give honor to the ancestors, first of whom is Mr. Garvey, Marcus Messiah Garvey, Sr. I call him, I call the great ancestors, I call Amy Jacques Garvey, Amy Ashford Garvey, call Martin Delaney, Edward Mount Blyden, Ida B. Wells. We call Honorable W.B. Du Bois, Paul Robeson, and from our time, we call Dr. Patricia Newton, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson. We call all. We offer up this libation as we begin to lift up this, our brother, this your child, Marcus Garvey Jr. We light this candle. Light this candle and we lift it up. We lift it up as a sign of his ascension from the earth plane to heaven. We call upon you, Brother Marcus, that you go in peace, that you bless us from heaven, that you join your father and your mother and all the great ones who have preceded you and guide us for the freedom and liberation of our people and the upliftment of mankind. Blessing to all those who are on this call. Blessing to all the chapters of the UNIA and to all of its heads. May we move forward. Guide us in that movement. This we pray as we celebrate your elevation. This we pray. Amen.
Amen. We thank you too, Nana Kwabena of the Temple of Nyame. We want to ask now if our brother Kevin would lead us in our national anthem. Brother Kevin, it's you, brother. There you go. All right. Thank you, brother Kevin. We do appreciate you. It is now my honor to share with you the obituary for our brother, whom we honor and lift up today on this 40th day since his passing, this day of Ascension. Marcus J. Garvey Jr., elder of the two sons of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, iconic civil rights activist and first national hero of Jamaica, and Amy Jacques Garvey, passed away on Tuesday, December 8, 2020 in West Palm Beach, Florida. He was 90 years old and had been ailing for some time. Marcus Garvey Jr. was born in St. Andrews, Jamaica, and received his early education at Calabar High School in Kingston. His subsequent academic and professional training with University of London, England, and University of West Indies, Mona Campus, Kingston, Jamaica, and City College of the City University of New York. He held a Bachelor of Arts in English and Economics and the Bachelor of Laws degrees of the University of London, the Bachelor of Science in Mathematics and Physics, the Masters of Science and Physics degrees of the University of the West Indies. He migrated to the United States in 1973 to pursue a PhD degree in physics. He subsequently earned a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering from City College in New York. Mr. Garvey taught mathematics and physics at several high schools in Jamaica, at the University of the West Indies, and at City and Hunter colleges in New York. Corporate professional employment included work as an electrical engineer in digital and analog circuit design, the analysis and design of optical fiber transmission systems, and the analysis of navigational guidance systems. Upon retirement in 1993, he returned to academia and served as an adjunct professor in the Department of Mathematics at LaGuardia Community College in New York, and also taught aeronautical engineering at the College of Aeronautics in Flushing, New York. On a part-time basis, Mr. Garvey also practiced engineering and consulted in his specialties, as well as being an expert witness in many engineering court trials. He was a registered professional engineer in the states of Massachusetts and New Jersey, a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the Optical Society of America, and the American Institute of Physics. He has also been published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature. Prior to migrating to the USA, Marcus Garvey Jr. was a member of the UNIA and ACL in Jamaica. In 1968, Mr. Garvey started his own political party, the African Nationalist Union, because he felt the country needed it at that time. The political climate at that time was rife with divisiveness, disenchantment, and corruption. The ruling elite considered him a threat and did everything to prevent the rise of a credible third party in the country. At that time, because of his young children, he abandoned his political ambitions and decided to leave the country to pursue a doctoral degree in the United States. Upon arrival in the U.S. and after school, his desire to continue his father's work led him to becoming a member of the UNIA division in Brooklyn. After several years of involvement, he was elected president of the local A.L. Crawford division. His participation at the national level eventually led to his election as the 7th President General and Administrator of the national body at its 39th annual convention held in Washington, D.C. in 1992. He served until 2004. Under his leadership, the organization made great strides in stability, and structures were being implemented in an effort to return the organization to its glory days. Sadly, after starting to experience some health issues, Mr. Garvey resigned, and his efforts to continually upgrade the organization had to be turned over to his next in line of succession. On a more personal level, Mr. Garvey had a great sense of humor indeed, and would often tell jokes about his school days. He was known by his nickname 100 before noon, so dubbed by his fellow classes because he always scored 100 on his various exams taken in the mornings. He loved to dance and enjoyed traveling. He was also fun to be around and was passionate about basketball and watching his golfing fave, Tiger Woods. Colin, his eldest son, often reminisced about his trips to the various mineral baths in Jamaica, where Dad, the swim coach, taught him how to swim, and they spent much time engaging in physical fitness activities. Marcus was a physical fitness buff. One of Kyle's fondest memories was attending his first New England Patriots game at Foxborough Stadium with Dad. For Michelle, her greatest moment was being robed by her stepdad upon receiving her Juris Doctorate degree. He loved his grandchildren. For the girls, wherever he was due to travel, they would send their Flat Stanley for trips with Grandpa. He would take Flat Stanley with him and upon return would send Flat Stanley back home. The girls would have Flat Stanley for show and tell at school with stories of where he had traveled. For Carrington, it was the ice cream fest after dinner, Marcus the chocolate maven, and Carrington the strawberry connoisseur. They made for a perfect match. Mr. Garvey is survived by his wife Jean, his children Colin, Kyle Sekou, stepdaughter Michelle, and son-in-law Hugh Morris, his brother Dr. Julius Garvey and wife Connie, his grandchildren Marissa and her husband Richard Harris, grandchildren also Amy, Jamie, and Carrington. He also leaves to mourn his lost 2 nieces, a nephew, several cousins, and a host of friends, colleagues, and organizational members and freedom fighters worldwide. He will be deeply missed, but he will be in our hearts forever. And we are thankful to the family and also the family is in our prayers. We're going now to hear from the Minister of Information of the UNIA African Communities League with a history of the UNIA, Brother Lion Blyden, if you will come forward now.
Peace and love, family. Are you able to hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you and see you. Wonderful.
Ashe. I am President Lion Blyden of UNIA Division 433, Montgomery Boroughs Division. I'm also the Minister of Information of UNIA ACL Worldwide. I greet you in the words of peace, shalom, assalamu alaikum, hotep, and as always, race first. To Mother Jean and the whole Garvey family, we offer our love. Brother, can you allow me to share my screen for a moment, sir?
Sister Crystal may be able to do that quicker than me. Yes, you're good. You should be good now. Yes, sir.
One more time. Actually, not this one that I'm speaking on right here. There's another one, Minister of Information. You see the M-O?
Yep. I think she's got you.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Again, family, this is President Lion Blyden from Montgomery Boroughs Division. I just put together a brief slideshow for you just to touch on the UNIA ACL, that the brother that we are honoring today, Dr. Garvey Jr., was 7th President General of. So his father famously said, "Look for me in the whirlwind or the storm. Look for me all around you. For with God's grace I shall come and bring with me countless millions to aid you in the fight for liberty, freedom, and life." Didn't he say it? So we ask ourselves as Garveyites, what is the whirlwind? What was he talking about? Clearly, he was talking about the UNIA ACL and the legacy that he left behind. Our preamble says that the UNIA ACL is a social-friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and an expansive society founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of Negro peoples of the world. When they created this, our world was a certain way. In 1916, we had certain problems as a people worldwide. Garvey saw this. He looked around and he said, "Where's the black man's king and queen? Where's the black man's men of big affairs?" And when he saw none, What did he say? He will help create them. He, along with the founders, Isaac B. Allen, Irena Mormon Blackston, Walter J. Conway, Carrie B. Merrill, R. Harriet Rogers, came together to form the UNIA-ACL 1918 in Harlem. After coming up to meet Booker T. Washington so they could create an institution. Remember that word we said a minute ago as far as the institutional society, expansive society. Who are the people that came together? These are people who came from all over the world. Over 25,000 delegates from around the world, from 40 countries around the world, came to vote on the nation that would be the solution for the very problems we were going through 100 years ago. Institutional. They created the Black Star Line, the Negro Factories Corporation, the Universal African Motor Corps, the Negro World, the Universal African Black Cross Nurses, orchestrated the Liberia Treaty, and even created the UNIA-ACL Air Force, the Black Eagles Aeronautical Bureau. Ashe, won't we do it? So when we see problems, we must build to solve them. We must look for solutions. We must look to the whirlwind. Garvey said famously, the tiger may be caged, he may be gone, but his cubs will still run free. Who are those cubs that he's talking about? True, indeed, he has his children that was just listed and honored as well they should be. But who else? Also, the lineage of leadership of the UNIA-ACL government that he created. Our 11 president generals you see listed here, from the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey Sr., to Marcus Garvey Jr., who was our 7th president general, on to our 11th president general, Michael R. Dunn, today. That is the legacy that was left. These are the cubs. So when it's time for us to discuss solutions for our people, when we know we're going through the same problems today that we went through 100 years ago, the very same issues we face in education, in law, in health, everything has the same solution it had then that we need now. So as we stand at the crossroads, do we go towards economic distress, mental paralysis, race suicide, or political death? Do we go back to slavery? Of course not. We must look to nationhood. We must wrap ourselves in the red, black, and green so that we may be that whirlwind for liberty, freedom, and life. Ashe, we must be that whirlwind. How can we do this? We must follow the very footsteps of our grand ancestors. The brother we here are honoring today, the 7th President General, the Honorable Marcus Jack Garvey Jr., his father, the 1st President General, Marcus Messiah, when they came up with the philosophies and opinions, this was a blueprint for our future. He said that he wanted an institutional, expansive society. That sounds like we must build. If we are to properly honor these ancestors, building blocks must be created. The foundation must be built upon. Therefore, we all invite you to come join the very government of our glorious ancestors and the Garvey family, the UNIA-ACL government of the world. So to you, family, I leave you with the words of our glorious association: one God, one aim, one destiny, and as always, race first.
Thank you, Brother Blyden. Amen. And now we will hear remarks, I hope I have the pronunciation right, from Raymond Duguay, 2nd Assistant President General of the UNIA-ACL.
Greetings, Africans. I hope that you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just give me 10 seconds.
Let us know if we can see you too. We'd love to see you too.
Okay, in 10 seconds. Okay, greetings, Africans. Hopefully all is well. Today is the celebration of the 40th, after 40 days of the passing of our 7th President General, the Honorable Marcus Jacques Garvey Jr. My name is Raymond Duguay, and I serve as the 2nd Assistant President General of the UNIA ACL, African Communities League. Is the ACL, and UNIA is the Universal Negro Improvement Association, the organization that his father, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, established on July 20th, 1914 in Kingston, Jamaica. We represented the UNIA at the funeral service of the 7th President General, Honorable Marcus Jacques Garvey Jr., and I will tell you honestly, it was a pleasure, it was an obligation, and this ties into what Marcus Garvey Jr. means to us. Not only is he a President General of the UNIA, in fact, being the 7th President General, but he's a direct line of descent from our founder. When Marcus Garvey Jr. became President General, what he brought is a direct line of descendancy from the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, but as already discussed in the eulogy, he brought structure and stability. Mr. Garvey Jr. was a Renaissance man, just like his father. He believed in reading and reading and reading. He believed in uplifting oneself. And Mr. Garvey Sr. eloquently says this, that the education that men, women have gained is outside of the universities. If you're expecting just to learn from what the schooling system has to teach you, you will fall far short. And just as Mr. Garvey, our founder, educated himself, organized himself, and challenged himself, Marcus Garvey Jr. did the same. In his lectures, you can see the very, very well-learned African, his knowledge of African history, both West Africa, East Africa, the onslaught of the Arab slave trade, the onslaught of the European transatlantic slave trade is impeccable. His knowledge of Africa, the connection. So my message here is to inform us that Marcus Garvey Jr. was a Renaissance man, was a direct line of descent from Marcus Garvey, our founder. He brought that stability, that respect. We were on the verge of reclaiming all that his father had established. And on a separate note, as the news came out that our 7th President General had passed away that Tuesday, I got so many calls, so many texts from individuals. They know that I'm UNIA. They all expressed their condolences. I mean, people like Dr. Jeffries, everybody you know, called me to express their condolences. And it's really a testament to the greatness of this African, Marcus Garvey Jr., that all over people felt the need to at least express their condolences, to say that we appreciate that what he had done. So, you know, during the court case against his father, the attorney, the district attorney, said to the jurors, who happened to be all men, he said, "Gentlemen, will you let the tiger loose?" And then when Marcus Garvey goes up to speak and he says, "You may have snared, you may have caught the tiger, but my cubs are running free." And Marcus Garvey Jr. was one of those cubs, and he did an excellent job. He continued the mantle of the red, black, and green, continued his father's vision, and he brought us to a level where the UNIA needed. I mean, all of a sudden, bearing his name meant so much more. And the fact that he brought science, and, you know, in African fundamentalism, his father writes that only that in our homes, we must teach our children to become scientists par excellence, that only with the knowledge of science and nationalism can we expect to overcome the conditions that we face. And Marcus Garvey Jr. was an excellent example. The science, everything. So in memorializing our 7th President General, I say to all of us here that this was an excellent example of a committed African, a true believer of African nationalism, a descendant of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, one of the Cubs, and he absolutely believed in his father's word. On June 20th, 1993, at a lecture in Newark, New Jersey, Mr. Garvey Jr. states, by the way, I'm Marcus Garvey Jr. I am the President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World, and a direct descent of line from Marcus Garvey. I'm the 7th President General of the UNIA, and I'm doing my father's work. And that work is the redemption of Africa for the Africans at home and those abroad. And then he ends, and that cannot change. And he did an excellent job. So to Mrs. Garvey, to the Garvey family, to the UNIA family, I commend you and on allowing this martyr, the son of the prophet, one of our heroes, to share his life with us. And for that, we will forever be indebted. Mr. Garvey Jr. was President General from 1992 until 2004. And I add, he only stepped down because of health concerns. The Alzheimer's, his medical condition had seeped in, and he felt, being a true committed African, he felt at that point younger voices needed to continue. My name is Raymond Duguay. I'm the 2nd Assistant President General of the UNIA ACL, and I'm at your service. Thank you, brothers and sisters.
Thank you, brother, and thank you for that powerful presentation. Amen and Ashe. Next, we will have a resolution from the Secretary General of the UNIA ACL, Brenda, again, forgive the pronunciation, Brenda Amoakan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sister Secretary General Brenda, are you with us?
I am, and you pronounced it perfectly.
Oh, wow, okay. Amen. There you go. We can see you now. Wonderful.
All right. My greetings to the family and to everyone here. I'm honored to be a part of this memorial service, and I'm going to read the resolution that we submitted to the family. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. Can you hear me? Or do I need to put on a mic?
We can hear you just fine. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. Resolution for Honorable Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr. Whereas the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, and African Communities League, ACL, was founded on Monday, July 20th, 1914 in Kingston, Jamaica by the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Whereas the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey built a mass organization, government, that went beyond mere civil rights agitation and protests and based itself upon a definitive, well thought out program that would lead to the total emancipation of the Black race from foreign domination. Whereas the UNIA at its height had 12 million members in 38 states of the United States and 41 countries on the planet. Whereas the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey is a notorious advocate of hard work, advocate of the singleness of purpose, and advocate of self-discipline. Whereas the first child born of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and Mrs. Amy Jakes Garvey on September 17, 1930 in Jamaica was to be named Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr. Whereas Marcus Garvey Jr. is an African scholar with 6 higher learning degrees and countless honors and accolades, whereas Marcus Garvey Jr. would become the 7th President General of the UNIA from 1992 to 2004, whereas Marcus Garvey Jr. would bring stability and structure to the UNIA. Be it resolved that a copy of this resolution be placed in the archives of the UNIA. Be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the family of the Honorable Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr. Now, therefore, I, Michael R. Duncan, President General of the UNIA, ask all our members, brothers, and sisters to join me in proudly honoring and celebrating Honorable Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr. for the profound accomplishments and inspiring example of commitment to the redemption of Africa for the Africans, those at home, and those abroad. Respectfully submitted, December 21, 2020, Michael R. Duncan, President General, UNIA ACL. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Shay, thank you so much, Madam Secretary General. We will now go back to the Minister of Information Blyden, who will have for us the UNIA ritual. Minister of Information.
And which ritual are we at, brother?
Well, the program just says UNIA ritual.
Okay, we open.
Let's move on to the next item.
To move on to next. Okay, that's not right. Okay, that's fine. All right. So so now the Lady President of Division 401 UNI ACL, Tania Scott, President Tania Scott, with the Ode to the Red, Black, and Green by Amy Jakes Garvey.
Peace and love, Garveyites. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. It is an honor to be a part of such distinguished celebration. Thank you, Garveyites, for considering me. Again, it is truly an honor to be among all of you. I have the pleasure of reciting the adoration to the red, black, and green flag that was adopted on August 13th and 1920 convention of the UNIA ACL. I ask at this time that you all mute your mics and raise your right fist high as the African spirit and repeat after me. Here's to this flag of mine.
Here's to this flag of mine.
The red, black, and green.
The red, black, and green.
Hopes in its future bright.
Hopes in its future bright.
Africa has seen.
Africa has seen.
Here's to the red of it.
Here's to
the red of it.
Great nations shall know of it.
Great nations shall know of it.
Red blood shall flow of it.
Red blood shall flow of it.
Great flag of mine.
Great flag of mine.
Here's to the black of it.
Here's to the black.
400 million back of it.
400 million back of it.
Whose destiny depends on it.
Whose destiny depends on it.
The red, black, and green of it.
The red, black, and green of it.
Great flag of mine.
Great flag of mine.
Great flag of mine.
Now here's to the green of it.
Now here's to the green of it.
Young men shall dream of it.
Young men shall dream of
it.
Face shots and shells of it.
Face shot and shells of
it.
Waving so high.
Waving
so high.
Now here's to the whole of it.
Here's to the whole
of it.
Colors brought and pole of it.
Colors brought and pole of it.
Pleased is my soul with it.
Pleased is my soul with it.
Regardless of what is told of it.
Regardless of what is told of it.
Thank God for giving it.
Thank God for giving it.
Great flag of mine.
Great flag of mine.
Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you for that. Yes, indeed. Ashe and amen. Next, we will have from our brother, and happy that he's able to be with us today, from the Howard University faculty. Our dear brother, Dr. Greg Carr, is here with us today. Dr. Carr, there we are. Yes, sir, brother.
Asante Sana, my dear brother Masamela. How are you, Baba?
Good, Baba. So glad you're able to be with us. Look at all those, folks be on Zoom, on TV with the library behind them. I think this brother got everybody's library. Look at all those books, Rem Wilson. Go right ahead, brother Greg.
Look, everybody's in everybody's house now, Baba. If I had someplace else to put the camera, I would. but I know this is a space where it's safe to show where we are. We are in community, and I just want to thank you. I'm going to keep this very brief. I want to thank you, Brother Masamela, for reaching out, and on behalf of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World, on this special ritual occasion. We just finished. We do a weekly conversation across digital platforms, really anchored in YouTube, with your colleague and friend, Sister Karen Hunter. And she told me to not only tell you, but tell the entire nation, the entire UNIA and ACL, that she, and we had about 10,000 people in the conversation this morning, send all of their love, all of our great respect, and all great energies in this ritual of recognition of Ascension of Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr., including very powerful tribute coming from the UK. It was the brother who entered the conversation from the UK, which of course we know the place that Marcus Garvey Sr. made his physical transition in London. So with that in mind, I just want to also recognize, thank the Creator for, and join in the embrace of the family. It is not often that we see the intergenerational transmission of strength, of purpose, of mission in as public facing and overtly dedicated way and consistent way. It's not often that we see it any better than in the Garvey family. And as one of the many who was blessed to be able to join virtually the Florida ritual, the initial ritual of transition into eternity, I'm sure I was not the only one who shed tears at the family's remembrances of our brother, our elder, our new ancestor, and who was not, I'm sure I'm not the only one who was moved and stirred to renewed purpose by watching the rituals that took place at that moment in Florida. And so as an African among Africans, it's an honor to be able to join in this moment. So with that in mind, just a couple of quick comments and maybe observations about the nature of this ritual and why, and specifically this brother is someone who we honor in many ways ourselves by now being able to call on for his renewed strength as he fights for us in the realm beyond that which we can see, which is of course everything except this tiny peephole we call life and reality. When a person, of course, makes transition, we know that Africans, being the oldest humans on the planet and the parents of every human being that will ever walk this earth, as we heard, we know that we've developed all the first rituals, and that we have maintained those rituals over the arc of the millennia that we have been in this form on this planet. And those rituals have often been attacked, set upon. There have been attempts to fracture them, but the consistent things remain consistent. We have always, for example, been very consistent about the nature of the intimacy of the moment of transition. The loving care with which we commit to treating our elders and those who make transition. The grief and tender remembrance of those who become ancestors too soon, like George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. The immediate embrace of the family in the wake of the transition, which we saw on display and continue to see. And then there is the ritual of elevation to eternity. In between the moment of physical transition and that final ritual of elevation, which we are in now, we give ourselves time to grieve, to remember, to think about and reflect upon the nature of our life in the wake of the transition of that person, and most importantly, to access that person's spirit as we join them in helping them into their ancestorhood. The lit candles, the prayers, the remembrances, the things that have transpired over the last 40 days. And so when we reassemble, we are now recognizing a powerful new ancestor. And we think about Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr., we're thinking about a lawyer, a mathematician, a professor, a scholar, an engineer, a scientist, a politician, an African, an athlete, so many other things. And I couldn't help but think about the fact that in the world that Amy Ashwood and Amy Jakes Garvey and Marcus Garvey and Hubert Harrison and so many, all of the people who came together to will into existence over a century ago now, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World, I couldn't help but think that Marcus Garvey Jr. walked in this physical world in ways which reflect the hopes, the dreams, the fight, the passion, the determination of this organization for all Africans to be able to do. What are your gifts? What are your abilities? What is your commitment to use those gifts and abilities, not for your individual advancement, for the community? I think we see that literally in the life of a man who never stopped learning, never stopped fighting, never stopped caring, never stopped embracing, never stopped expanding family, never stopped being African wherever he was in the world, never stopped attempting to reconstruct the societies in which he found himself, whether it be through an attempt at the African Nationalist Union in Jamaica or becoming first reconnected with the UNIA ACL in Brooklyn, or eventually becoming the 7th international president. And then saying, we're born to make physical transition, and recognizing that the beautiful thing about a true organization is no one of us can always turn it over to. So I'll close with this. Listening to the ritual of interment, the ritual of transition, December, I was particularly moved by his daughter Michelle's description of being hooded by her father in Houston at Texas Southern University at her hooding, her law school hooding, when she received her law degree. And in that moment, her classmates, the faculty, those in attendance, recognized for the first time that she was the granddaughter of Marcus Garvey, the daughter of Marcus Garvey, that should have chilled through my body, because it tells us two very important things. I'll deal with the second important thing first. It tells us who we are to other people. In other words, when you say Marcus Garvey, when you say Marcus Garvey Jr., when you say Julius Garvey, Dr. Garvey, of course, our friend and brother, been with him, and we don't think I'm like John Henry Clark. Marcus Garvey doesn't need a pardon because he didn't do anything wrong, but because you want it, we want it, brother, and we gonna get it. Barack Obama could have let his hand tremble at the end of his presidency and let that left hand sign a pardon, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. That's all right. We're going to will a pen into the hand of somebody in there and get that done. But who the Garvey family is to other people can be discounted. But in that moment in Texas, the beautiful revelation was who you are to us. And in that moment, classmates, attendees, faculty, shocked, and then realizing they had been embraced by a bloodline that is unbroken. It's a powerful thing. So we pray now, and we include in our prayers our powerful new ancestor, the dutiful firstborn, his father's son, his mother's son, our brother, new ancestor Marcus Jakes Garvey Jr. Ashe.
Ashe. Thank you, Dr. Carr. We, as always, love and appreciate your witness and what you are always able to share with us. And now, sisters and brothers, mamas and babas, it is my pleasure to bring forward now our dear brother, who we often call upon at times like this to take us through the transition and through the ascension. He is a chief elder not only in our village of Southeast Washington, D.C., but in Ghana as well, where he is known as Chief Nana Kwajo Boafo I. His church in Southeast Washington, D.C. has been a home for us to gather in and for us to wish those well who have passed away. In fact, it is the mural on his wall. The Sistine Chapel has its mural, but Union Temple Baptist Church has its own. And that mural sitting at the Last Supper with the Black Christ is Marcus Garvey Sr. Nowhere else will you find that. And so to not only lead us to the throne of grace, the mercy seat, but as always to exegete and bring forward the theological foundation of transition and ascension and ancestry, knowing that we as a people do not have a linear relationship with reality, but a circular one where the past and the present and the future come together. We know our brother Marcus Garvey Jr. will not leave us, and as Dr. Carr alluded to, he will be with us in the ancestry, and even more powerful, operating in the ancestry from heaven in that role. And here to share his theological thoughts with us and bless us with the eulogy now, we welcome now Pastor Emeritus of Union Temple Baptist Church, as I said, the Honorable Chief Nana Kwajo Boafo I in Ghana. Pastor Willie F. Wilson is here with us. God bless you. Hear ye him.
Well, thank you, Matsamela. And let me just take a moment to first give honor to Almighty God and thank him for this blessed privilege it is. And it is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to share in this eulogy. I want to acknowledge Sister Crystal as well as Brother Matsamela, all of the officers of the UNIA, and particularly and especially Jackson Bay, whom I worked with for in a number of years here in Washington, D.C. when he was working as leader of the UNIA, and certainly acknowledge him even as he has made his transition some years ago. And Mark, might I just take 1 second and mention John Chaney, the great coach of Temple University basketball team, because he came in an era along with John Thompson when they were part of the few who were black men who were coaching. And I remember so well is getting all of his players up at 3 a.m. every morning to run, to teach discipline, and was one of the great coaches in basketball who paved the way for the many black coaches that we have on today. So I want to honor him along with our dear beloved Sister Tyson, who has joined that realm of the mysterious realm of the ancestors. And we honor them today, even as we honor Marcus Garvey Jr. in this service. I want to acknowledge the family of Marcus Garvey Jr. and say to you, we love you and we honor you. And in the words that were just expressed by our dear brother, just the name Marcus Garvey has so much meaning and relevance to us, even just calling that name. When we talk about a eulogy, eulogy comes from the word eulogia, which means to say good things about. And of course, that begs the question then of why would we say good things about one who has made their transition? And that brings us to the reality that the eulogy is not so much for that person who has made the transition as it is for those of us who remained. It was Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Effective People, who said we would do well to begin in the end. And then to express what he meant by saying that, he said, go back, and I say to you today, go back to when you joined this Zoom an hour or so ago. And as you go back, come into it not for the memoriam for Marcus Garvey Jr., but for yourself. And what would somebody say about you? No, what should they say about you? No, what could they say about you? And Kobe says what you would find is that, yes, you may have been climbing the ladder of success, but you might find that that ladder was leaning against the wrong wall, because what you thought was important was not then as much important as you thought. And this is why quite often people say, give me my flowers while I can smell them. So that inasmuch as the eulogy is for those of us who remain, it is for us to extract from that life certain elements, certain character traits, certain values that we can inculcate into our own lives to make us better human beings. There should be then, out of a eulogy, and God willing that he would bless me in these few moments to give that, a clear mandate to those of us who remain, directives to those of us who remain, and a plan of action to those of us who remain. To do that, I want to lift up two sayings, one of which has been mentioned that Marcus Garvey made in a speech that he made in 1924. And I want to juxtapose those two statements in that speech of 1924 with the 19th division of Psalms and the first 3 verses. In the 19th division of Psalms, it says, the heavens declare, that is, the heavens speak to us, the glory of God, and his firmament, everything that he's created, showeth forth his handiwork. Day upon day, it utters speech, and night upon night, it revealeth knowledge. And then just think of that again. Remember these words. The heavens declare the glory of God, and his firmament showeth forth his handiwork, day upon day, his creation, his heavens, his firmament, uttereth speech, and reveals knowledge. Now put that alongside of these two sayings of Marcus Garvey that I want to lift up, that will give us greater insight into the great life of Marcus Garvey Jr. Marcus Garvey said in that 1924 speech, black men and black women reach up and pull down knowledge from nature. Black men and black women reach up and pull down knowledge from nature. Now, if you listen at Psalm 19 and this statement by Marcus Garvey, they're talking about the same thing. Marcus Garvey says, reach up and get your knowledge, a higher knowledge, if you will, because you have to reach up to get it, and then bring it into you. Then he said, look for me in the whirlwind or in the storm. Look for me all around you. I hope you're hearing what I'm saying. And for I shall come. We know the greatness of Marcus Garvey. We know that he was one of the first, if not the first, to infuse black pride in black people based on our African heritage. His progress and his growth was monumental. So much so that the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, called him, labeled him, quote, a notorious Negro agitator. And thus, Marcus Garvey was the original notorious, much more notorious than Notorious Biggie Smalls, because as my dear brother Khalid Al-Mansour, may peace be upon him, because he made his transition several years ago, but a great scholar, a great teacher, a great African who traveled all over the world and who wrote in a number of books. In his book, Africa Rediscovered, he stated in that voluminous volume that in 3 years, Marcus Garvey became the only mass leader in the black race that we have ever had at that time or since then. And that within that same short 3-year period, so says Khalid Al-Mansour, Marcus Garvey led the UNIA to rise from 100 members in 3 years to somewhere between 4 and 6 million members, when the entire black population in America was somewhere between 9 and 10 million, which means that almost half of the black people in America were a part of the UNIA. And in that same span of 3 years, my brother states in his book, Marcus Garvey packed Madison Square Garden without any assistance from white media, from the white power structure, or from the black middle class, and raised $10 million. Brother Mansour says that would be equal to $30 million raised in one night in Madison Square Garden. And he was the one who was able to bring together more Africans on the continent, in the Caribbean, and in the diaspora than anybody before or since. And of course, the many other accolades and achievements that we could talk about. So how then, here it is, does all of, or do all of the great achievements of Marcus Garvey connect us to the life and the work of of Marcus Garvey Jr. Psalm 19 says, if I can repeat that again, the heavens declare the glory of God. Now that word glory in the Old Testament, it comes from the word kabod, which means the true essence, the true nature, or the full weight of God's creation. In other words, when whatever God created manifests the true essence or the true nature of what he has created, that is the glory of God. So that when you put a bird in a cage and it cannot get out of the cage, that bird cannot manifest the true nature, the true essence, the full weight of what the Creator intended that bird to be. But if you let him out of the cage and he's able to soar through the air, that bird is in its glory, and it manifests the glory that God put in it when God created the bird. When you take fish and pull them out of the water, they no longer can exercise or manifest their full weight, their full glory, the true essence, the true nature of what the Creator created them to be. They begin to squirm and flip and flop outside of the water, but you put them in the water and they swim all around you, laughing at you because you have to learn how to swim. But the fish in water manifests its glory and therefore gives glory to God because it gives full weight. It shows the true nature and the true essence of what the Creator created man to be. And so when Marcus Garvey said, black men and black women, reach up to nature, because in nature we find the lessons of life. Someone has said nature is, what the creations of God, or energy, if you will, is differentiated energy, undifferentiated. That is to say, everything is made of the same energy. So that when Marcus Garvey said, look for me in the whirlwind, because we are made of the same energy as our environment, because the Creator put his essence in everything that he created. So then, what did Marcus Garvey Jr. do? He did what his father said to do. He reached up and studied nature. As you heard his
bio, as you heard his obituary, you heard about his expansive study, but I want to hone in on what was the primary focus of his study, and that would be physics and math. What does physics do? Many people shun away from physics because they think it's just about science and the environment and how the fact that everything is matter and that everything that's created is matter. And it speaks then to, in physics, the interaction between two different separate elements and what happens when those elements come together. But at a deeper level, physics is about life. If we understand when we study physics, it helps us to engage in critical thinking so that we become analytical beings who can evaluate what is going on in the environment, in the life that we live, in everything that is going on around us. And so Marcus Garvey Jr. listened to his father and took it to another level in terms of knowing, in order to deal with the wicked oppression of the enemy, that we must become critical thinkers. And so to understand physics is to not only understand the interaction between two varying or different elements, but in the larger sense is to understand the interaction between human beings. And the fact, in order to deal with the evil that we face as a people in this nation and on this planet, we must become critical thinkers and understand the value of developing the ability to assess and to analyze and to critically examine what we see so that we understand what we really see. So Marcus Garvey Sr. said, pull down from nature, even as we look at Psalm 19, which says, the environment, nature, utterly speaks. Nature talks to us. Nature teaches us if we know what we are looking at when we look at nature. My dear sister, whose eulogy I was able and blessed to do also, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, along with some other psychologists and psychiatrists, back in the 1990s, on a yearly basis for several years, they conducted a melanin conference. And one year they did that conference at Howard University at Crampton Auditorium. I was there. I was in attendance. And one of the presenters was Dr. Richard King, a psychiatrist, a psychologist by profession, a PhD, but who had done intense and prolonged study of ancient African science. And so he fused his knowledge of African science, I'm going somewhere right here, with what he had learned in Eurocentric studies about the mind. And so then there is a part of the mind called the locus coeruleus. The locus coeruleus, Dr. King called it the black seed or the black dot. It is black matter that is in the brain that contains a lot of melanin. And he says that that black matter, which he calls the black dot or the black seed, is the doorway to the collective unconscious, which allows the collective unconscious, or if you will, the subconscious mind, where the power of God resides in us, that leads us into the spiritual realm. Once that locus coeruleus allows the subconscious mind to travel to far away places and bring back that which it has gone for. One of my dear friends, Dr. Naeem Akbar, former professor of psychology at Florida State University, Naeem Akbar, says that everything that our ancestors has ever known is in our genetic unconscious, is in our collective unconscious, and therefore in our genetic memory. And when we begin to do what they did, it jogs our genetic memory, and all of what they knew begins to come back in us. And I want to talk about George Washington Carver for a minute, that great black scientist who in his youth, as young as 11 years old, they called him the little nigger plant doctor because he could heal people's crops. And from there, of course, as you know, went to Iowa State University. But what he knew did not come from Iowa State University. And ultimately went down to Tuskegee to teach for many years. And many of the other colleges wanted him to leave and come teach at their institution. He said, no, I want to stay at Tuskegee because people think I'm a genius. I'm no genius. But if they did what I did, they would have the same knowledge that I have. So what did he do? He got up early in the morning, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, went out into the woods and meditated and prayed. And the Creator, as he said, would give him his directions for the day. And then he would go back into the laboratory and do and create what the Creator had given him. So it was he who saved the South. Because even as in ancient times in ancient Egypt and Africa, our ancestors knew how to rotate the crops. He taught those in the South how to rotate the crops so that they would not deplete the crops and not be able to grow food. He taught them and us and many how to develop 300 products from sweet potatoes and peanuts. That's why Hershey chocolate ought to thank him every day because he taught George Washington Carver out of Formula 311. Hershey developed the Hershey bar and the Reese cup. So every time you eat the Reese cup, you ought to think about George Washington Carver. Every time you eat peanut butter, you ought to think about George Washington Carver. When you go to the Exxon service station and you see that pump says 10% ethanol, this is why Henry Ford and his family continue to give $1 million a year to the Tuskegee Institute, because when Henry Ford made the automobile, he did not know how to make it move. And he went to George Washington Carver to create a fuel. And from corn, George Washington Carver created ethanol so that that car could run. And so when you go to Exxon today, you see on the pump 10% corn fuel, ethanol. But that's not the biggest one I want to talk to you about. In 1930, in the Atlanta Constitution newspaper, they reported that George Washington Carver had created this vivid blue color that he named, George Washington Carver named Egyptian blue that comes from the formula that creates oxidation 9, which is very difficult to create. Now, in 1922, the tomb of King Tut was discovered in Egypt, but they did not talk about, the Europeans did not, any of the findings in that tomb until 1932, 2 years after George Washington Carver created what he called, having never physically gone or been to Egypt, the same brilliant blue that is found on the walls of the tombs of King Tut. So 2 years before anything was revealed about what was in the tomb of King Tut, George Washington Carver not only duplicated the same blue, but named it Egyptian blue. And so when we talk about science, math, and physics, as was the primary study, in my opinion, following the instructions from his father, Marcus Garvey, Garvey Jr., put a whole lot of study into math. Now we think about math only in terms of numbers and formulas, but math also teaches us to think analytically, logically, and to use critical thinking, so that Marcus Garvey Jr., whether intentionally or inadvertently, and I think intentionally, was moving into an arena of study that would help our people to be able to think clearer, critically, and to be more analytical, and to be more, have much better logical reasoning and understanding of the world around us. Marcus Garvey said, pull down from above knowledge of nature. The same as Psalm 19 tells us, what we can learn from nature, because the same, everything, there's a counterpart for everything you find in the physical realm. There is a counterpart in the spiritual realm. So Marcus Garvey said, whether you see me physical or spiritual, I will be there. So look for me in the whirlwind. So the whirlwind, the wind, the Bible says, blows where it listeth. The wind blows wherever it wants to blow. And the wind of Marcus Garvey blew on Marcus Garvey Jr. and blew into his mind, study. And when you study math and study physics. For in math, you learn inscription. You learn two-step equations used to decrypt messages and to crack enemy messages. Example, if you're listening to the radio and you're wondering if they're going to play your favorite song, in the study of encryption and two equations, you don't have to study, you don't have to wonder if they're going to play your song. But through the study of encryption and two-step equations, you can calculate whether your song will be played. But let's take it further. If in terms of encryption, in the study of math, you come to decrypt messages of the enemy, perchance you will be able to discover as did Marcus Garvey Sr. not be able to discover some of those who were right in the UNIA, who were infiltrators from Hoover and the FBI to bring down the UNIA. So Marcus Garvey Jr. was on a journey to not only just learn the physical aspects of math and algebra and physics and all the aspects of math, but to also study slope-intercept equations that helps you develop wisdom and frugality in a spiritual sense, and helps you to understand whether it is profitable to go into a particular venture, so that as the black line of ships was developed, the expertise of a Marcus Garvey Jr. would have been able to assess the profitability of buying ships that were used in World War I, and to override the negative speaking of even those like W.E.B. Du Bois, who wrote a scurrilous paper on Marcus Garvey's economic ventures, because as you know history, you know there was an ongoing feud between the two of them, because when Marcus first came to America, he came with the intent to meet with Booker T. Washington. But Booker T. had died just before he got here. So he said, let me mosey on up here to New York and check on the NAACP. And when he walked in, he saw that everybody was white or light and bright and halfway white, including W.B. Du Bois. He said, this ain't no black organization. And from that point, a feud developed between the two. So at a time when W.B. Du Bois could have been one of those to help to elevate the UNIA, he was one of those who worked to destroy the UNIA, who, among others, like A. Philip Randolph and the future Bishop Chandler Owens of the Church of God in Christ, who led the movement to say, Marcus Garvey must go. But Marcus Garvey Jr.'s knowledge and understanding of the transference of the knowledge from a physical realm to a spiritual realm that comes out of the study of mathematics and physics that allows you the ability to be a critical thinker, would then take the UNIA to a higher level and a greater level, so that Marcus Garvey Jr. represented in his study the new age Garveyism, such as what should need happen now as we look at the rise of social media. And I know many of you saw when the Black Lives Movement began to rise here in America. All of a sudden you had Black Lives Movement demonstrations in Russia, and in Africa, and in Israel, because of social media. So armed with the critical thinking, I think that as we talk about the future, it would have to be not just the linkage that Marcus Garvey Sr. made between Africa and the diaspora, but taking it to another level where critical thinking would command developing strategies and then comparing strategies, so that those in Africa can know what we're doing here in America and compare the strategy here so that it can be applied there, and what will work here and what didn't work here that might not work there, and vice versa, is what Marcus Garvey Jr. in his study of math and science brought to us as a people can be no more pertinent and relevant than now, when so many of us struggle with the rightful fears about this new vaccine for COVID-19 and need to employ every means of critical thinking to evaluate, particularly in terms of what the enemy has done to try to destroy us, not only mentally, but spiritually and economically and socially in every sense of the word. And so it was just a few days ago, our dear brother, having made his great contribution, made his transition. And so Marcus Garvey Jr. may his tribe increase. Awoke one night from a deep dream of peace and saw within the moonlight in his room an angel writing in the book of gold. Marcus Garvey Jr. asked the angel, "What writest thou?" The angel said, "The names of those who love the Lord." And Marcus Garvey Jr. asked, "Is mine one?" The angel replied, "Nay, not so." Marcus Garvey Jr. spoke more low, but cheerily still. "I pray thee then, write me as one who loves his fellow man." The angel wrote and vanished and returned the next night with a great awakening light and showed the names of those that God loved best. And lo, Marcus Garvey Jr.'s name led all the rest. Ashe, Amen, Amin, Amina.
The Reverend Willie F. Wilson, sisters and brothers, Pastor Emeritus, Union Temple Baptist Church, also, of course, one whom can put it like no other. What a moving eulogy for our dear brother Marcus Garvey Jr. Would you not agree? And what, as always, teaching us and allowing us to learn in the same spirit as Marcus Garvey Jr., as he was a master teacher and scholar and studying the sciences that his father studied, and George Washington Carver as well. So we are so thankful, Pastor Wilson, and glad you were able to be here with us today. I think at this point, we are now going to have the poetic music with B.J. Durham and Raheem Rasta. So B.J. and Brother Raheem, are you ready to lead us? All right, need you all to unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
We can hear you just fine. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the UNIA ACL, the program that was created by Marcus Garvey Sr. We are honored to be able to help to bring about an understanding and the celebration of the life of Marcus Garvey Jr. The UNIA that has been here in Washington, D.C., we've been able to participate in some of the programs for our community. This one is one of the more renowned programs that we have been invited to be a part of. As Poetic Music, 20-year organization from Chicago and Washington, D.C., we give honor, respect to Marcus Garvey Jr., to the UNIA, to all the members, the presidents, the officials that keep the movement going. Thank you again so much for inviting us. And at this time, we'd like to have B.J. Dorm, the author and poet, give one of her original compositions and one original poems.
This poem is titled Life. Your life is up to you. That is how you choose to live it. What road you choose to endure, what track you choose to run, and just what pace you choose to get the job done. There are so many different roads in life that one must pick and choose from. Therefore, one must take the time out to stop, think, and prepare to realize this is the only life which I know I am guaranteed of. There are no exchanges, no refunds, no rebates, and no warranties. Therefore, one must live it wisely. Knowing that down the roads, one will run to different bumps and potholes. One must travel on in life and be willing to deal with the good times and the letdowns that life will surely bring. Knowing that no one really knows when one will hear their final ring. So therefore, one must always keep in mind, this is my life, my only life, and it is up to me to live it wisely. Thank you, Marcus Garvey Jr., for sharing your life with us. Amen.
We thank you for that. Beautiful. Thank you, Sister BJ, Brother Raheem. Good to see you again, Brother Raheem. It's been some time. Yes, yes. Now, let's see. We have, is Pure Elegance ready? I know they said they need a little extra time. I'm going to have UNIA give me an update. Pure Elegance, are you all ready to go, or do we want to hold you all a little bit? No, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. I'm sorry. Are we going to eat? This is a virtual meal, so we're going to eat. I want to see how we do that virtually. I'm sorry. So we welcome now for our virtual meal and repast, so to speak, Chef Nikisha Royal Aki.
Yes.
There we are.
And greetings to all the kings and queens. It is a privilege and an opportunity to be amongst so many generals in the room today. I first want to give honor and respect to Gene Garvey and the Garvey family. Thank you so much for sharing the life of the Honorable Marcus Garvey Jr. with the world. And secondly, I want to give thanks and honor to the UNIA for this opportunity and privilege to share. My name is Chef Nikisha Roche, and I am a first-generation American. I was born here. Both my parents are from Kingston, Jamaica, which my dad is still there in St. Catharines right now. But one thing that always brought my family together, no matter where in the world we were, was our strong heritage of our Jamaican food and the love for one another. So today I want to be able to bring the family back to the dinner table through a presentation of food. So everybody get your appetites ready. We are going to take you all to our Sunday dinner table. So on the menu tonight, we're actually going to be making a traditional Jamaican Sunday dinner, which is oxtail, rice and peas, cabbage, and some plantain. However, to all my vegan sisters and brothers online, don't worry. You can always use a mushroom or bean substitute instead of the oxtail. But it's going to give you, I'm going to take you through the process of cooking it with the same ingredients, and you can also replicate this at home using a meat alternative. All right, so to get started, everybody, I've got some dry seasoning here. I've got some seasonal, black pepper, paprika, some garlic powder, and some onion powder. So I'm gonna add that in here to my oxtail, which is already prepped, washed. Anybody from Jamaica knows that we have to wash our meat before we even start using it. So it's already been washed with some vinegar and some lime. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my dry seasoning in here. All right, and I've also got some fresh thyme. So we're gonna add some fresh thyme. All right, so we're gonna mix that on in there. And to get that nice brown coating, that nice brown color, we're gonna add a little browning. All right. Awesome. And I'm actually using about a pound of oxtail. All right. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to get ready to braise the oxtail. Whenever making Jamaican oxtail, you always want to make sure you braise the meat to get a nice golden color before you start to stew the meat. If you stew the meat before braising it, what's going to happen is the meat will get a bit rubbery and the consistency won't be the same. So you got to make sure you follow these instructions. All right, so we're going to get started here. I've got a skillet here to my left, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put a little olive oil in the skillet. It's about no more than a tablespoon of olive oil. So I'm going to put that in there. Got my oxtail here. Hopefully you can see that okay. Yes, so the oxtail has been seasoned already. So now we're going to put this in the skillet here. And we're just going to braise the meat. Ooh, and I can smell the spices already. And hopefully you all can smell it over there virtually as well. All right. And like I said to my vegan sisters and brothers, you can always use a mushroom or bean alternative for the same dish and acquire the same flavors and taste. All right. So what's going to happen is you're going to coat that oxtail. You're going to braise it on every side. That takes about 10 minutes or so. Once it's nicely browned, what you want to do is you don't want to toss that bowl that has all that good seasoning in it. You're going to put the oxtail back in this bowl. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cook it down. And with cooking it down, we're going to need some colorful peppers here. We have some red, gold, and green peppers. We also have some onions in there. You can't cook anything without your Scotch bonnet peppers. We got our Scotch bonnet peppers. We've got some tomatoes, and we also have our butter beans. All right. So once the meat is braised, what we're going to do is we're going to add our seasoning to the pot, and we're going to cook it down, and then I'm going to show you all the final product. To cook this dish, it typically takes about an hour to 2 hours, depending on the grade of oxtail you're using. So you do have to, be patient with the process and slowly cooking it. All right. Awesome. And one interesting thing about Sunday dinner with my family is my background. My great grandmother, Sis, is who taught me how to cook. And food is what always brought the family to the dinner table. Food was the place where we would sit around the table and learn about our Jamaican history, our culture, and also my mom's upbringing. My mom, literally, this is her favorite Sunday dish. So I wanted to be able to share it with you all and the Garvey family as we continue on this celebration of life and legacy. All right. So for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and start cooking down the oxtail. So like I said, we're going to add all those peppers in there. We're going to add our tomatoes in there. We're going to add our butter beans. And I can smell that going. And then you also want to have about a cup of water for when you start cooking down the oxtail. You don't want to use too much. So just use a little bit at a time, put the lid on, and it's going to do all of its work for you. All right. All right. So we're going to put that on there. And we're going to put the lid on, and that's going to literally take a good hour or 2 hours, depending on the meat quality that you have. And I'll show you, ladies and gentlemen, kings and queens, it's dinner time already. I know you didn't think we could cook that quick, but we did. So here, let me get your plates ready. All right. So dinner is served, everybody. We have oxtail with steamed cabbage. We have rice and peas, which you can use gunga peas or red peas. Today I used the red peas. We also have some fried plantain. I love my plantain nice and ripe. So we've got some ripe plantain in there. And then we also have some festival on the side. Since we are celebrating the wonderful life of the Honorable Marcus Garvey Jr., we wanted to add in some festival to continue with the beautiful celebration. And I love lots of gravy. So we got some gravy on there as well. And dinner cannot be completed without my Aunt Maxine's black rum cake, which I want to share with you all today. So, all right. So we've got some black rum cake. So after dinner, everybody, we'll be indulging in some rum cake as well. It has been an honor and privilege to share this space with you all. I send my love and my peace. God bless.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. I'm hungry now, though. I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking around. I don't see having any food right next to me, so I'm trying to figure out. Okay, we'll figure that out later. Y'all ain't right to do that to me and show us all that good. But we thank you, dear sister, and of course, this is also a very important part of our culture and our celebration. And I commend those who had the creativity and vision to include this as a part of this celebration. So yeah, folks are putting in the chat, how do we get a plate?
So I'll share that information later, but thank you all so much.
Can you share it now?
Sure. So you can all follow me on Royal Aki, which is Royal and then Aki. It's ACKEE.com, and you can connect with me there. And I would love to share the dinner table with you all as well.
Yeah. What if you don't mind me asking, what city are you in right now?
So I'm in Bowie, Maryland. I'm in the Bowie region. So we deliver Sunday dinner throughout the whole entire DMV. Okay. And this is our thing. We want to bring the community and the family back to the dinner table. That on this special occasion today, so thank you.
I was hoping you would say New York, because I was going to come over there tonight. But okay, we appreciate you, sister. Thank you so much. And she's absolutely right. We've got to get back to sharing at the dinner table as a family like we used to. We always eating on the run and passing each other rather than sitting down and sharing meals from our culture and having that type of fellowship. Amen. So thank you again, dear sister. We will now move on. Pure Elegance is going to be with us a bit later. So what we're going to do now, we're going to pull together a panel discussion to celebrate the life of Marcus Garvey Jr. And we want to have the panelists come forward and get ready. So first of all, of course, we have the Queen with us, the widow, Mrs. Jean Garvey. We want to welcome her. There we go. It gets good. Crystal, add everyone to the spotlight. That'd be great. And then now we also want to welcome Dr. Julius Garvey, his brother. Dale V.C. Holness, Commissioner, District 9, Broward County, Florida. Oliver Mayer, Honorable General Counsel in Miami of the Consulate of Jamaica, if he is here. Doctors Leonard and Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, both Dr. Jeffries. Michael Duncan, the President General of the UNIA-ACL. Yao Davis, Executive Director of PATA. Nana Kwabena Brown of Temple of Inyame. And if Reverend Wilson is still with us, we welcome him to join as well. What a powerful eulogy he gave, and we invite Reverend Wilson to join us as well if he's still here. He may have left. Okay. So we're good. This is going to be our panel discussion, another creative feature of this wonderful 40-day service of Ascension. I think we would do well to begin our conversation. Again, much thanks to the family for its role in this, and also for inviting all of us to be here. I think we do well to begin with Mrs. Garvey. And Mrs. Garvey, let's just first hear from you, your reaction to what you have seen so far today. Hopefully we have carried this program forward in the appropriate way. God bless you. We are praying for you, and of course you have our condolences. We want to offer the floor to you first of all. Mrs. Garvey, we can't hear you. You're unmuted though, but let's see if we can get your mic working. We were doing...
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am really, really very moved by the thoughtfulness that you have put into this program. It really warms my heart, and I thank you so much for all you have done and the august company that you have put together for this. It has been very well done. Thank you so much, and I am very, very pleased.
All right. Thank you for allowing us to participate in being a part of this. We're going to hear more from you as well. Julius Garvey, dear brother, please join us now with your thoughts and reflections on your brother, on this day, and on this service, if you will.
It is indeed a privilege for me to be able to participate here with you all as we commemorate my brother's life and also celebrate his ascension. I think it's important to know that he's a product of an environment. And of course, the environment is Marcus Garvey and Amy Jakes Garvey. My father died when I was 7 and my brother was 10. So that my mother is the one that raised both of us. And she has the greatest credit in terms of whatever it is that we have become. And certainly in terms of my brother, I have great memories of him studying at 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning, having been awakened by my mother, who was egging him on in his academic studies. She was very much an inspiration in terms of pointing the direction in which we should go. And even though in some sense we were single parent children, as I mentioned, I was 7, my brother was 10, but we never lacked for an image of our father. And I think that's of extreme importance in that she always taught us of who he was and what he stood for. So from the earliest age, we knew of the dimensions of our father's thinking, we knew the dimensions of his sacrifice, and we knew his philosophy, sort of with mother's milk, if you will. So we grew up as Africans, African Jamaicans, but we had the concept of Africa coursing through our minds and our hearts from the earliest memories. And of course, my mother was also not only a mother in that sense, but she was a great example in that she participated in the politics of the time and also communicated with many of the UNIA that were still functioning in the United States and abroad, and many Pan-Africanists all over the world. Many people came to the house to learn from my mother. about my father's work. So all of this was the milieu in which my brother and I grew up. And as has been said here today and previously, this is what gave him his focus. This is what gave him his trajectory. And of course, he was named Junior, so he aspired to be like his father. And he did exceptionally well in being able to carry out the message and carry on the legacy. I think it's important to understand the role of the mother in terms of sustaining a legacy. No man can do it all by himself. We speak a lot of Marcus Garvey, but many of you know, of course, that when he was in prison, it was my mother that collected the speeches, etc., and put them together in terms of the Philosophy and Opinion, volumes 1 and 2, and so on, and subsequent work that she also put together. And again, as I mentioned, she carried on this type of correspondence and education of the next generation of people who were kids, if you will, when Marcus Garvey was present, and people such as Rupert Lewis and Tony Martin benefited from her teachings, just as Junior and I call my brother Junior, this is what we call him at home, just as Junior and I benefited from her teaching. So, it's important to look at how then Marcus Garvey's legacy has been handed down. Certainly my mother was more than just a hand-me-down. She was a participant, and she spread the message when he couldn't, but she took care of the message when he was not there, and she made sure that in these days of vaccination that we were inoculated from a very early age with Garveyism. So we got our injections very, very early, and we have developed the appropriate antibodies and so on in terms of our resistance to white supremacy and our taking up the cry of my father, Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. And Marcus Jr., my brother, he emulated the same type of sacrifice and against odds that my father encountered. Because when he took up the battle politically in Jamaica, of course, that it was not popular, and the party politics of the time stood against him and pushed him out of the way. And of course, he dedicated a great deal of his time here in the United States to resuscitating the UNIA for a period of about 10 years. And I know Mike Duncan is here, and he'll speak to that. And Mike is carrying on the legacy in terms of the UNIA. I see Len Jeffries here. He's been an associate and so on of my brother and of myself and of people like Dudley Thompson. We're all Garveyites of the, if you will, the old school, a passing generation. But it's important that we spread the message and carry it to the younger generation. And that is our task at the present time. And that's why I mentioned, my mom, in that she took the message from my dad, which was also partially her message, and she gave it to us. Now it's up to us to give that message to the next generation. And those people that I've just mentioned are certainly doing that at the present time. And of course, Reverend Willie Wilson, of course, he gave a great message. So I'm very happy to be in the company of such giants and people who are carrying on the legacy of Marcus Garvey. And, in our understanding of our people, there's birth and there's death, but life continues. Life is continuous. And right now, Marcus Garvey is with us. Amy Jakes Garvey is with us. And Marcus Garvey Jr. is also looking on and is waiting for his next life. So we give thanks for that. And we give thanks to those of you who are here to help us commemorate. And we grieve because we have lost something, but there's no real grief in that life continues. And it's up to us then to carry on the legacy as it has been passed on to us to the best way that we can, as Marcus Garvey Jr. did in his life. So thank you for these moments of being able to express myself.
We thank you for allowing us to share these moments with you and the family. It is an honor. As Reverend Brother Wilson said, being around you and your brother, and particularly when your brother we would bring your brother to Washington, D.C. to speak, it was as if we were hearing your father's voice itself. I want to share before we're going to bring our brother from the consulate on, Brother Oliver. But before I do, just two special messages. Others who are watching this and sharing, I've just heard from Joy Reid at MSNBC, and she sends her condolences to the family, you, Mrs. Garvey, you, Brother Julius Garvey, and she too speaks of just how close we are to history. She is watching with you and sending her regards. She is Caribbean herself. We know Sister Joy Reid is. And also, believe it or not, just fresh off the basketball court, a fellow Jamaican just texted me after they won their game. Fellow Jamaican, our dear brother and my dear friend Patrick Ewing has texted me to let you all know that he is praying with you and for the family as well. Georgetown Hoyas won their game today, and he had texted me just moments ago to send his greetings and his love and his condolences as well. So, from hearing from one Jamaican to now going to another, we want to hear from now Brother Oliver Mayer from the consulate. Our brother, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And well, first of all, on behalf of everybody in Jamaica, we just want to extend again our deepest condolences to all the family and friends of the late Marcus Garvey Jr. You know, I recognize Mrs. Jean Garvey, Colin, Kyle, Sekou, Michelle, Dr. Julius Garvey, and all family and friends, members of the UNIA. You know, in just listening to Dr. Garvey's presentation and sharing his words, he mentioned two names, Professor Rupert Lewis, who just lives down the road from me in Jamaica, and Dr. and Dudley Thompson, who lived up the road from me when he was alive in Hope Pastures. So I feel so honored to have met these powerful gentlemen, and to have met, of course, all the great persons here, like Mrs. Garvey and Dr. Julius Garvey. I want to first of all just say a few words about the power of women. I want to salute the women first. I had the honor of, after the funeral of Mr. Garvey Jr., Marcus Garvey Jr., I spent some time at the home with Mrs. Garvey. And let me tell you something, I was so moved by the power of this lady, her wisdom, her counsel, her strength. And I believe the world has a lot to learn and to benefit from Mrs. Jean Garvey. So I'm just putting that in. As you know, Marcus Garvey Sr. is our first national hero for Jamaica, the highest honor that our country can bestow on a human being. So Marcus Garvey is extremely important, not just for Jamaica, but for the world. And I briefly want to mention two quotes from him. If you have no confidence in self, you're twice defeated in the race of life. And also, a people without the knowledge of the past, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And the influence of Marcus Garvey on perhaps one of our strongest assets, reggae, is undeniable. And for February, we celebrate Reggae Month. And I just want to quickly mention a couple of the greats. Burning Spear said, let's recall some great men who have been fighting for our rights. People like Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Paul Bogle, Martin Luther King. Then we have Peter Tosh that says that song, Equal Rights and Justice. Timely messages inspired again by Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Rise to the occasion, Sizzler. Look at yourself and say you're strong. No one can stop you. And then, of course, Bob Marley. Until the philosophy which hold one race superior and another inferior is finally and permanently discredited and abandoned. Everywhere is war. And the message of our first national hero is so apt that at this time, equal rights and justice is so important. And we salute the work of Marcus Garvey, and we salute the work of Marcus Garvey Jr., as well as Dr. Julius Garvey, the work that they continue to carry on their father's legacy, because the message is just as relevant then as it is today. And for a man to have created a movement, when I said it first, to have over 8 million followers, I was corrected by a member of the UNIA who said it was 12 million. And so in an age where there was no social media, to have that type of following just speaks to the power of the Garvey family. And I salute Marcus Garvey Jr. and Dr. Julius Garvey for continuing the work of their dad and ensuring that our human race wakes up and embraces these strong messages of our prophets like Marcus Garvey. And we thank Marcus Garvey Jr. for the work that he has done. So again, on behalf of all the people of Jamaica, we salute Marcus Garvey Jr. for his work, keeping on the legacy and message of our first national hero. Thank you.
Thank you, dear brother. We thank you. We now want to hear from our brother Dale V.C. Holness, Commissioner, District 9 in Broward County, Florida, if we could, please.
Oh, good. Queen Mother Jean Garvey, Brother Julius Garvey, Pastor Willie Wilson, what a powerful message and an education for us about our people and our history. Honorable Consul General Oliver Mayer and all the members of UNIA ACL and friends and guests online, good evening, greetings to you. I bring you greetings from Broward County, where I served last year as the mayor of the county, 1,900,000 people, with over 540,000 people of African descent, Black people here in Broward County. Marcus Garvey certainly is a great figure in the world, but for me as a Jamaican-born person, it is even more so. The path that I am on, where I am today, is because of him, and he's an inspiration. The way I govern is governed in light of what he's done. His philosophy of building the African diaspora and strengthening Africa, going back to build a more powerful Africa for all Africans, is a philosophy that all of us ought to be more engaged in. I was in Ghana in February last year for a trade mission, and to see the star on the Ghanaian flag representing Garvey's philosophy of Black Star Line and how we can be stars, it was really a powerful thing for me going back. Today, we continue to honor his legacy, and part of that legacy, of course, is his son. And I have a document that I'd like to read that I presented to the family at the funeral and read there. It's expression of sympathies from the county of Broward. It's a document that's now recorded in our history. I worked in conjunction with the Jamaican government through Consular General Oliver Mayer to put this document together. And it's one that I requested, Commissioner Dale V.C. Holness, Broward County, and it reads, whereas Marcus Jacks Garvey Jr., son of Marcus Mazai Garvey, iconic civil rights activist and national hero of Jamaica, West Indies, was born in St. Anne's, Jamaica. And whereas Mr. Garvey received his early education at Calabar High School in Kingston, Jamaica. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Arts in English and Economics and the Bachelor of Laws and a Master's of Science in Physics. He migrated to the United States in 1973 to pursue a PhD degree in physics. And whereas Mr. Garvey was a retired physicist, electrical engineer, and mathematician, known for his contributions and expertise in digital and analog circuit design, innovative and cutting-edge analysis and design of optical fiber transmission systems, and the design and analysis of navigational guidance system. He also worked in system designs for the U.S. Department of Defense. And whereas, as an educator, Mr. Garvey taught thousands of young engineers dispersed throughout the diaspora. Garvey was also well known for his thought-provoking and inspirational speeches on his father's philosophy of Garveyism. And whereas Mr. Garvey was a registered professional engineer in the United States, in the states of Massachusetts and New Jersey, and a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, the Optical Society of America, the American Institute of Physics. He has also been published in the prestigious scientific journal, Nature. And whereas Mr. Garvey, following the footsteps of his late father, served as the 7th President General of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, the organization founded by his father. Whereas the Jamaican Consulate in Miami joins in celebrating the life of Marcus Jacks Garvey Jr. and honors him for the tremendous work he has done, furthering the work of his father, the Right Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, to make the world a better place. And whereas Mr. Garvey is survived by his wife, Jean, brother, Dr. Julius W. Garvey, his 2 sons, Colin and Carl, his stepdaughter, Michelle, and 4 grandchildren. He also leaves behind a host of friends, family, colleagues, and organizational members worldwide. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Broward County, Florida, that the board hereby designated Tuesday, December 22nd, 2020, as Marcus Jacks Garvey Jr. Remembrance Day in Broward County. This we did at the day of his funeral. I join in saluting the life of a great man, and we honor him, and will continue to honor his life, his legacy, and that of his father. Thank you for having me be a part of this great event.
Thank you, Commissioner. We so appreciate you, and we appreciate the resolution as well. Amen. Now we want to hear from our dear elders, Doctors Leonard and Rosalind Jeffries. Hotep to you both. Love you. Wonderful to see you. Please, the floor is yours.
I would like to say that while the capital of the United States is on our minds, that I'm reminded of Nancy Pelosi, who was asked the question about Black Lives Matter, and in order to be bipartisan, she said that all lives matter. But the real understanding, people knew that it was a question of who was being shot down in the street, who was dealing with race profiling, and it was Black people, no matter whether they came from the Caribbean, from Jamaica, or born in the states of the United States, or came from Africa. They all saw us as one and united. And her response was that if in an emergency, if there was a problem, that she believed in race first, meaning that with the government going here and there, but ultimately her base had to do with family, race first. And so I said, that is Marcus Garvey. For God I live, for God I die. For the Black family I live, for the Black family I die. I honor the Garvey family, Jean Garvey, Julius Garvey, and many of those who are assembled here or listening. I honor Dr. Mark Thompson for helping to pull us all together. And that's what we must say to ourselves. What is our legacy? What are we living for? What are we willing to die for? United we stand is what Marcus Garvey said. His life was on the line. There were many people who wanted to get rid of him, but he stood firm. And that firm, courageous stand is what we must stand on in these perilous times. Oh, what a great God we have. And so he knew that. And amongst his organizations, Flying Eagles, the airplane, the Black Cross nurses, the military, the economic, the culture, all of these things went together as one. And so that's what he was teaching us, that we are to continue with our stance and for the generations to come behind us and for that are behind us and the generations to come. We love Marcus Garvey today because he took that stance and said, meet me in the whirlwind, meaning be ready to battle. For God I live. I'm reminded of ancient Kemet. The people there were a godly people, and the symbol that they chose was most high, most supreme, was a banner. And so too Marcus Garvey brought forth the red, black, and green as a banner for us. In ancient Kemet, the word Neter meant God supreme. They had, other people underneath, agents, but that idea of God in the banner, in the meaning God is really visible in our hearts and our souls. So that I don't want to talk too long, but I do just want to leave you with that quick message saying that who are you living for? What is your legacy? Are you willing to die for the godly causes, the united UNIA?
Thank you. Dr. J, the other Dr. J. Dr. J, we're having trouble hearing you. Maybe you can get a little closer to the microphone?
Yes, is that better?
Much better, yes. Loud and clear.
Okay. Well, Brother Charles, our partner here, he's done great coming all the way from New York and setting us up for these different activities. And so we had to give thanks that the young fellows like him, one of the sons of Africa that we created in order to be with us during this struggle. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here at this moment to honor this great brother, his family, and the friends and associates who have taken on the mantle of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I see my brother, Michael Duncan, standing strong. And for me, he's a blessing. Can't describe it, won't describe it, just to say he is truly a blessing. And of course, I understand the difficulty of a junior. A junior has a problem, especially if there's some youngers under him. And I know that in the growing up of Marcus Jr., there were some scars that were placed on his younger brother. I'm a junior, so I know what I've done to my brother over the years. And so I'm apologizing for what your older brother did. He didn't know any better. He was doing what older brothers do. But in spite of that difficulty, you have soared. And I've been with you on this journey. I've been with you to Africa. we have worked in Harlem. The Garvey contribution that was made by Dr. Julius was to make sure that the Dr. Clark House, where we had the Board for Education of People of African Ancestry, was properly handled. And in fact, it was Dr. Julius who came up with the money to put the plaque to acknowledge the Clark House right there in New York. So this is about family. I hate to even mention our brother, the Reverend Mark. He has been one of those young people who we have been so glad to see rise. And we have this saying in our community, and then I rise. And so it's a family affair. But the Queen Mother of the day is our Queen Mother, Jean Garvey. I think about her all the time simply because we lived in the same neighborhood. We used to leave our house here on Schoonmaker and walk 4 or 5 blocks to the north, and we would go to Hamilton Avenue or Terrace, and that was where Jean and Dr. Jean and our great professor, I'm giving his doctorate too. I know Julius will say, wait a minute, you're going too far, Dr. Jeffries, but I'm giving a doctorate to both of them. And coming out of the genes that they come out of and the socialization that they have and the world experience they have. So we would go to see Jean. Now, it was good to see Marcus Jr., but Jean was a delight. And when we turned that corner and went down and knocked on the door, and she looked out and saw it was the Jeff, she said, the Jeffries are here. And we would be invited in, and we might be there. We went for the exercise of walking and getting our exercise, but we might be there for an hour or 2 or 3 with this enormous couple. And so I still remember that I can't look out my door without thinking about Jean, because we would step out and we would step over to the terrace. I hope I can get the city of Teaneck to name the street Hamilton Terrace after the Garveys. And so I'll be working on that. There's work that we have to do. But this is a glorious moment. I don't even want to comment on the Reverend Willie Wilson. I mean, goodness, I've been in many of these historic moments where people have to give a message, but that was way beyond what is normally given. That was spirit. That was the powers that be, the ancestors, the creator speaking through that brother. And so we have to do thanks to him and those forces that move him. So Queen Mother Jean, this is a special love coming out from the Jeffries to you. Only you know what you did to make sure that Marcus Garvey Jr. understood that you were together forever. Only you knew the pain and suffering that was necessary to carry a great brother during difficult times. And you did it while as long as you could. And I know when this virus came through, it really dampened your ability to function as you do, because you couldn't go every day and do the things that you did. This is between Queen Mother Jean and the ancestors and the creators. She did what great women do, and they don't even ask for any acknowledgement, but we have to. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a little 5'5" mother. Rosalind wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her mother. These mothers put that special stuff in us. Mark Pablum was not Dick, Jane, and Spot. Mark Pablum was Booker T, W.E.B., and Marcus Garvey. And so my mother was a Garveyite. Her father was a Garveyite, and coming up from the South. So this family relationship is really what we're trying to emphasize here. And of course, when our brother from Jamaica mentioned another giant, another one inspired by Marcus Garvey. You're talking about a brother who was born January the 19th, and I think it was 1917. I was born January the 19th, 1930, 20 years after him. But Ambassador Dudley Thompson represents the best of our people struggling for their great dignity. His daughter just called me last night. She's in California, the youngest daughter, Kathy. And of course, the relationship, the family relationship is what I'm trying to refer to. So we are, and I just wanted to, I can't go anywhere without the books. We are in a great moment and period of our history. And we need a symbol for what we are doing generation after generation, standing on these giant shoulders. And this is where we are going in our great movement. This is the great Renaissance Memorial in Dakar, Senegal. And it really represents the best of the Garvey family, the best of the UNIA contribution, the best that my wife and I and others like us could give, the best that our sister Jean represents. And it's the rise of the Black family. The Black man off of his knees, standing up, taking control of his role. And he can't do it by himself. He has to do it with and for the family. So he's leaning on his rock, the Black woman. And so you have the Black man rising and the Black woman providing her support. And he's holding up to the future, the young Black child, the strength from her womb. And that young child is not playing with the father. The young child is pointing up to the Creator. And that pointing up to the Creator has great implications because it represents where we have to go. That monument was purposely built. It built to speak to us in the best of the Garvey tradition. That child is not pointing north to Europe, where we usually look to sustenance, for education, and for role models. That child is not pointing east to Mecca. He's not pointing south to the rest of Africa. The child is pointing across the Atlantic Ocean to the Africans in the diaspora. This is the mission that the Garveys represented. This is the mission that UNIA and that tradition represents. This is the mission of our great scholars, the Dr. John Henry Clarks, the Dr. Joseph Nyakinen, that we have to link up the diaspora scattered throughout the islands of the Caribbean, South America, Central America, and the continental United States. And that mission is real and necessary. Dr. Clark would say it best: Pan-Africanism or perish. Either we find the Pan-African way out of no way, or we're going to be lost. And so I wanted tears of joy. I want to be able to feel and shed, and I have to thank all of you who pulled this together. The last book out of my many thousands of books, I just want to quickly show that this process is real. That monument that you saw in Senegal, and then Dr. Julius and others and I have visited, the monument is not just a physical structure, it's a spiritual structure. What was that, Charles? Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm looking at everybody on the screen. And Charles is trying to tell me, you need to look at the screen. Well, at any rate, what I'm trying to say is that the dreams of the Garveys and the other greats in our tradition are wrapped into that monument. I remember standing with some of our leaders, and I believe Dr. Julius was with me. And inside you have the history of African peoples. the great work of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, one of the greatest of our people. His work is in the monument. It's not just a physical structure, it's a spiritual, educational structure. The story of our people is there. We were standing together. I was with Dr. Julius, and in back of us were the images of Marcus Messiah Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, W.E.B. Du Bois. All the conflicts and all the things that may have occurred were put to rest, and there was a unity. And so to have a monument that speaks to education, that speaks to spiritualization, that speaks to your future, is an enormous contribution. And that's where the Garvey movement and our great scholars, Dr. John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben and the rest, and our great sisters, Frances Cress Wellesley, gets said. And then I put my wife and I, that's where we want to be able to go. My wife and I are celebrating the 60th year of our relationship to the African continent. I just celebrated my 84th birthday, and people said, Dr. J, what you going to do? Are you celebrating your day? I said, no, I celebrate the whole year. I got 84 and I want some more. And so, but we have to be satisfied and thankful that we were able to hang together, stay together, and create. The latest work in this book, I came a part of my life in the 60s and 70s, and I helped get it translated. But the latest contribution that has come across my door is Malcolm X, Arising. And it is written by Les Payne with the contribution of his daughter. And there's a young Malcolm. Well, Malcolm comes out of the Garvey context. His family were Garveyites, mother and father. So when we deal with this great history, we go into the family. And of course, Michael Duncan has his family involved. He's reached out, and brother-in-law and the rest. I mean, he's linking up Africa not only with his business acumen and his vanguard understanding of economics, he's making a statement in terms of linking Ghana with Nigeria, with Liberia, and with Jamaica, and with Black America. So we have to understand where we're going, and it is on a victorious path. And this book is entitled The Dead Are Arising. That's the latest book. This book came out as one of our earliest books, and it involves that we are world-class people, that civilization and culture comes out of our consciousness. And that's what Marcus Messiah Garvey and his sons and family were trying to let the world know. That's something that we have to continue. And then you can't forget the elders, the ones who stepped forth in history, Dr. John Henry Clark, The Unfinished Revolution. And so on this book, in terms of Unfinished Revolution, the first picture is Kwame Nkrumah. And then you have Marcus Messiah Garvey. You have also our great brother at Patrice Lumumba. So Dr. Clark's great work is that there's an unfinished revolution that we have to be about. And he was up from the South, but somebody from the deep South coming up from Mississippi produced this monumental work in the spirit of the work of Marcus Messiah Garvey, the red, black, and the green. And the title of this 1,000-page book is A Moral, Political, and Economic Importance for the 21st Century. This is a young brother who came up from Mississippi, where it was against the law, like Dr. Clark used to tell us, for you to get a decent education. But this brother, Amos, was able to get a foundation in Mississippi, go on to Atlanta, and get that education, achievement education in Morehouse, and then come on up to New York, where the spirit of Marcus Messiah Garvey and his traditions were real. And so when the brother came up to New York, he got an expanded consciousness. And out of that came this monumental book, A Blueprint for Black Power. And what we have to do, our leaders, particularly those who are carrying on the active roles now, including our beautiful brother Michael Duncan and the rest of his team, and Mark Maximilian Thompson, and our brother Willie Reverend Willie is still carrying on strong. We have to come up with a blueprint for Black power. And so put these documents and put these stories and these tributes together, these institutions, and so our work is not done. It's real. And so I want to pay homage to our brother Kwame Nkrumah, who was a Garveyite par excellence. And he represented the leadership of African nations like Sekou Touré and others, Julius Nyerere. And this is the story of his life. And he left Ghana, coming to America to get an education. And then the Pan-African consciousness became a part of his great work. And there's no greater Garveyite than this brother. And the story around him coming to Lincoln University, later meeting up with Dr. Clark and others and developing this consciousness of Pan-Africanism, and then to continue it. The great institutional process that he left us was the 5th Pan-African Conference. And he was one of the inspirations of the conference, where 200 plus African leaders from all over, all the islands of the Caribbean, all parts of America came together to map out a world agenda. So we have the status and the tradition already established. Who was there? W.E.B. Du Bois was given the nominal head of the 5th Pan-African Conference. The person who was carrying on the heavy weight in organizing was our brother, Kwame Nkrumah. Who was there? Dudley Thompson was there in RAF uniform. Professor Edward Scobie, my partner at the City College, was there in RAF uniform. They became serious Pan-Africanists after the military experience. Who was there? The Garvey, Emmy Jacques Garvey was there. And who was there also? George Padmore, whose great book was, after being a part of the communist world movement, George Padmore from Trinidad said that we need to have an understanding of communism as serving communists and not serving African people. So his book is Pan-Africanism, Communism, and out of Trinidad came so many others. Tony Martin represents a continuation of that. He carried the Garvey spirit in all of his writings and whatnot. So we have something serious that we can tap into. There's no need for depression. There's no need for misdirection. There's no need for us to not understand we can get over the difficulties we have. Coming from the islands of the Caribbean, we had these great Africans, but also coming from South America, from Guyana, you had Ras McConnell. And Ras McConnell was a businessman, our leader, Michael Duncan. Ras McConnell used his economics. He had restaurants. And in England, when you have a restaurant, you have a lodge. And he helped to provide the housing and the meals for these brothers and sisters. So we have to get into this history. Don't run from it. Take from it and let it empower you. So I leave you with this last bit of our history. And we can't limit it to the English. I'm going through my archives and I'm finding unbelievable materials. And so here I found a French-speaking volume called Black Match. And right there, the first person in the framework of the African continent is Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And right near him is Kwame Nkrumah and other great leaders, including King. And one of the great moments for King was to be at the Ghana independence celebration. Wyatt T. Walker told me that King would always use the rising up the red, black, and green, the Nkrumah flag with the Garvey star in it, and the taking down of the British flag. And who was there at that meeting in 1957 at Ghana independence? You had not only Martin Luther King, but you had the Johnsons, two of them. Mordecai Johnson, President Mordecai Johnson, head of Howard University. Who was there? You had Johnson, the economic genius who put together the Ebony Publications Johnson Publications. So here you had Black folks from various parts of America that were there at the birth of this consciousness. Now this is in French. La Renaissance Africaine. Cheikh Anta Diop and our brother Thabo Mbeki. They were a part of the crew, at least Thabo Mbeki and the president of Senegal, that pulled together the Renaissance Monument. And so that struggle continues. And this last particular item is African business. And there you have the Black Pride and Consciousness by Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Global African Presence and Liberation, Renoko Rashidi, a great work by Haile Gerima from Ethiopia. And you have various other articles linking business and culture. So I'm saying I can't have these materials hide away in my archives. We're trying to get them prepared so they can be donated to one of our great universities, Morgan State in Baltimore. So we've got a responsibility, but we've got a path. We need a methodology that's clear Pan-Africanism. We need models, and we have them. Put down the sad sack models that we are called upon to raise up and take all of these greatness that comes out of that tradition that's so represented, so meaningful by the Garvey tradition. Dr. Julius, you can smile, you can go to your rewards with a smile. You can, and Gene, there's a special space. They're waiting for you at the pearly gates and say, you got to put out the red carpet for this sister who laid us an example. And then the young Michael Duncan, he's still young compared to me. And the foundation that he's standing on, Marcus Jr. helped to lay it. How do I know? I was there. When our brother, who was a professor, he was into physics and mathematics, engineering, when he realized that he had a responsibility of stepping up like his father had done and put this institution together, he asked me to join him in Philadelphia. And he wanted me to make a major presentation to the meeting of the UNIA. And it was at that point that he did get a leadership responsibility, and he held it for a dozen years. And so the significance of linking with the Garveys is so real and so meaningful. I just want to say, give thanks, give thanks. Find a Pan-African way, and that's the victory. Put the conflicts behind, put the pettiness behind, put the sore hurts behind. Don't worry about it. There can only be one junior, so you have to make up for what you can make up for. And my brother has done it. Anybody living under Junior, Len Jeffries Jr., I mean, that was a hurting, but my brother has helped to produce these youngsters in his, and out of his family condition. So you got Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, you got Dr. Hassan Jeffries. And so it's a family affair. We're on a victorious path, and we have to make it real. We have an obligation. And so we want to give thanks to the Garveys, give thanks to the children that when they had the celebration and they broadcast, it was wonderful to see the children carry on and share tears of joy and commit themselves to continue to do the work of the family. Power in the hands of our African people is what we need. Power is what models we have, and we have no excuse but to get busy and do the work. Thank you very much. Madasi P. Many, many thanks, brothers and sisters.
And Madasi to you too, Dr. J, and to Dr. Rosalind. Thank you both so very much. So good to see you. Glad you are healthy and well, and happy 84th birthday
Yes.
to you also. Dr. J shares the same birthday as Dr. King himself. Amen. Now we will hear from the President General of the UNIA, our president. We welcome our brother Michael Duncan. President Duncan, if you will, please.
Thank you, brother. Brothers and sisters, I greet you in the name of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the greatest man that God placed on earth. I am so honored to be associated with the names Garvey. You have to realize that Garvey, that's our royal family. That's our royal family. Dr. Julius and Marcus Jr., our princes. And we thank them for carrying on the work of our great leader. Brothers and sisters, the greatest day for me was the day I picked up philosophy and opinion of Marcus Garvey. I came from Jamaica when I was 14, and I thought I was a Jamaican. I really believed I was a Jamaican. But after reading the book, Philosophy and Opinion of Marcus Garvey, I realized that I am an African born in Jamaica. At the age of 17, I realized that the only thing I was looking forward to is to going back to Liberia and continue the work that Mr. Garvey, my teacher, my prophet, the greatest man that ever walked on earth. That was my job, to go to Liberia and do that work. Brothers and sisters, I don't speak anything for myself. I don't need to create anything for myself. Everything I need was created and left in the black prints by the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. I feel honored that I can even try to put my feet in his shoes. Marcus Garvey Sr., Marcus Garvey Jr., it's a wonderful thing. So this Ascension ceremony, brothers and sisters, it's so important, it's so good, because we must canonize our royal family. We must serve our royal family. The Garvey family is our family. Brother Julius, it was a blessing day when I met you, my brother.
Y'all gotta get out of here.
It was my pleasure, my brother. Sister Jean, I thank you.
President Duncan, unmute yourself, please.
Yes,
there you go. Go right ahead.
Yes. I'm not sure where I left off. But brothers and sisters, as I said, it's an honor to honor our royal family. It's an honor to be here serving Marcus Garvey Jr. and for all that he did. He did the work for us. Division 330, I want to thank you for putting in that work. Sister Crystal, Brother El Badr, and the whole crew. All the participants, I would like to thank you for your participation today to making this an honorable day to honor our leaders, our royal family. Dr. Jeffries, I want to thank you for the books you have given me over the last 5 years that prepares me to do this work that I have to do, that we have to do. Brothers and sisters, even the sun, no matter how hot the sun is, at the end of the day, the sun sets. So Mr. Garvey Jr.'s sun had to set. But remember, our ancestors only die when we stop talking about them. Our ancestors only die when we stop canonizing them. Brothers and sisters, we must continue this work. I am on the shoulders of great men, Marcus Garvey Jr., Marcus Garvey Sr. And brothers and sisters, the work that we have to do cannot be done by a few of us. Each and every one of us must play a role in this process. Marcus Garvey said, each and every one of us who have African blood coursing through our veins, we are UNIA members. He said that there are two types of UNIA members. One who is active and the next who is inactive. Brothers and sisters, to continue to canonize Marcus Garvey Jr., we must keep his work going. We must make sure the message and the plans for Liberia come to a reality. That's why we are in Liberia. In 1919, Mr. Garvey said we should start the building of that city. It was supposed to be completed by 1924. Brothers and sisters, 2 years ago, we had the first UNIA International Convention in Liberia. By 2023, we want to start the building of that city. Brothers and sisters, but each and every one of us must play a role in that process. Each and every one of us should take the time to come to Liberia and see for ourselves how we are going to make our royal family proud. I invite each and every one of you, my brothers and sisters. Marcus Garvey said, chance has never yet satisfied the hopes of a suffering people. But it's through hard work, commitment, that we can do this, my brothers and sisters. We have built what is called a Liberty Farm in the Grand Bassa area of Liberia. We are building the Marcus Garvey Academy in Grand Bassa area in Liberia. The good thing is that the stars have aligned themselves in Liberia for us, where we have a friendly government that understands Garvey and Garveyism and is willing to support it. So brothers and sisters, the time is now. Mr. Garvey said God and nature first made us who we are. And then out of our own creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. That's what Marcus Garvey Jr. did. Follow always those great laws. Let God and the sky be our limit and eternity our measurement. What man has done, brothers and sisters, we can do. And that's why we are doing it. Brothers and sisters, that's why we're doing the work. But I need your help. We need your help. My wife gets upset sometimes when I say race first. And she asked me if I really believe that race should be first. She said, do you put race before your family? I said, no, race is a part of my family. Do you put God before? No, God is a part of my race. I said to my wife, my youngest son is named Marcus, after the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. And if God forbid, and I'm not here anymore, he's going to need the race. He's going to need the race to create that base for him to stand on. Brothers and sisters, it's so good to be associated with the Garvey family, to our royal family, and to serve them. We want to continue to canonize Marcus Garvey Jr. and make it possible. It's his work from 1992 until 2004 that stabilized the UNIA. Why I am able to be serving in this position right now. If he did not take charge and make sure he stabilized it, maybe there would not be a UNIA for me and my family and my friends and my generation to serve. So I want to thank the Garvey family for their commitment from 1914 until today. But all I'm saying, brothers and sisters, I need your help. We need your help. We cannot do it without you. We are in Africa. I was in Africa for 8.5 months, brothers and sisters, in Liberia. And we were able to get a lot done. We have 2 UNIA divisions in Liberia right now. We have 2 in Ghana. We have 1 in Sierra Leone. We have 1 in Kenya. We have 1 in Zambia. And we are working on Nigeria, South Africa, and a few more countries, brothers and sisters. But we need you. We have gone into the Ndinkra village to promote Garvey and Garveyism. We're in Grand Bassa County, where some of these people have never seen vehicles before, and they're learning about Garvey and Garveyism, our royal family. The greatest thing that ever happened to me is to be a part of the Garvey movement. Everything I own, everything I possess is because of the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey and the prophet, his children, his family, his royal family, our royal his family, brothers and sisters. I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate being involved with this family. Brothers and sisters, Mr. Garvey changed my life. Mr. Garvey gave me a different outlook on life. He gave me that confidence. Brothers and sisters, I must say to you that through Mr. Garvey, everything is seemingly possible. You know, I take Mr. Garvey with me. As I said, I don't create anything myself. Anything I speak, anything I do is from the books of Mr. Garvey. I don't need to be bright or anything. I just need to follow the black prince left to us by the greatest man that ever walked on earth. You have to realize that since ancient Kemet, the Garvey movement has been the only movement that worked for us. So why would we not go back to it? Why would we not go back to it? Mr. Garvey in Harlem. Mr. Garvey was brought up on trumped-up charges. And when Mr. Garvey was in the court system in New York City on trial, Mr. Garvey was getting the better of the U.S. attorney. The U.S. attorney turned to the jurors and said, "Are you going to let the tiger go? Are you going to let the tiger go?" When Mr. Garvey stood up, Mr. Garvey said, "Yes, you got me. However, my cubs are roaming." Marcus Jr. was one of the main cubs. Julius is one of the cubs. Dr. Jeffries, you are one of those cubs. Doctors Jeffrey, let me correct that. Doctors Jeffries, brothers and sisters, you here on this program here, you're a part of the cub system that must make Garvey and Garveyism come to a reality. Sister Jean, what you have done and continue to do, we thank you. Division 330, this is what you're doing. But Mr. Garvey was convicted, and someone asked him, "Mr. Garvey, if you had the chance or the choice to do it all over again, would you do it the same way?" Mr. Garvey responded, "When I did what I did, I knew exactly what would happen to me. However, men who are in earnest are unafraid of consequences." Meaning, brothers and sisters, we must do what we believe to be right. Do what we do so that we believe to be correct, and be prepared for the consequences if you believe it is right. Mr. Garvey was sent to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. I have visited the penitentiary a couple of times just to visit and just to feel the spirit. And brothers and sisters, everyone believed that when Mr. Garvey was in that prison, he was going to be killed. Mr. Garvey believed he was going to be killed. So Mr. Garvey wrote a letter. And brothers and sisters, anywhere I speak, I take that letter with me. Anywhere I go, I take Mr. Garvey's voice with me. I don't do anything without bringing Mr. Garvey's voice with me. And the letter said, "After my enemies are satisfied, I shall come back to serve. In life, I shall be the same, but in death, I shall be a terror to the foes of black liberty. If death has power, count on me to be the real Marcus Garvey. If I may come in a cyclone, pestilence, or as God would have me, black people, don't you know I shall never desert you and make your enemies triumph over you? Would I not go to hell 1,000,000 times for you? Would I not cry at the footstool of the Lord omnipotent for you? Would I not walk the earth like the ghost of Macbeth for you? Then why be sad? Cheer up and be assured that if it takes 1,000,000 years, the sins of our enemies shall visit the 1,000,000th generation of those who hinder and oppress us. If I die in Atlanta, my work then shall only begin, for I shall live in the spiritual to see the days of Africa's glory. When I am dead, wrap me in the mantle of the red, the black, and the green, for with God's grace and blessing, I shall rise again. I shall bring with me countless millions who have died in the Caribbean, North America, and Africa to aid us in the fight for freedom, liberty, and life. Brothers and sisters, Marcus Garvey Jr. will only die if we stop talking about him. Marcus Garvey Jr. will only die if we stop doing his work. Marcus Garvey Jr. will die if we let the UNIA fail. So brothers and sisters, we are on a plane to start the building of that city by 2023 in Liberia. Mr. Garvey said, let Africa be our guiding star, our stars of destiny. Brothers and sisters, let's canonize our royal family. Let's keep our royal family. Let's build the UNIA. Mr. Garvey, the Garvey's name will forever be planted on the UNIA. Let's raise that red, black, and green flag in Grand Bassa County, Liberia, and then each and every state on the continent of Africa. I thank you and I salute Marcus Garvey Jr. and the Garvey family. Thank you. One God, one aim, one destiny. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President General. Yes, sir. Amen. And Ashe, Madase to you. Very powerful. And we are all proud, and we proudly take the title of Cubs in this movement. Amen. Joining us now, we'll hear some words from the Ethiopian Tourism Ambassador, Ambassador Yao Davis. Ambassador, please.
Thank you, Division number 330 for hosting this, and all our distinguished guests. I'm in Ghana right now. I'm in a town that was introduced to me by a UNIA member. And for those who don't know me, I've been involved in UNIA since I was 12 years old. So in Cleveland, Ohio, where the UNIA had headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. So basically, myself and my sister grew up, and thank you to my father, Honorable Joe C. Davis, to introduce me to the UNIA and ACL. And I had a chance to know Marcus Garvey Jr. on numerous occasions and to work with him, particularly out in Los Angeles, where my father asked me, Honorable Joe Davis, to restart the UNIA division in Los Angeles. So in 1988, yes, that's when it was. In 1988, I restarted the UNIA division back in Los Angeles, California. And the Honorable Marcus Garvey Jr. Had a chance to, on a couple occasions, come to Los Angeles, California. And one occasion was, and I think the first occasion was during our international convention, which I worked closely with Miss Jean Garvey on and various others of the UNIA back in 1991. And an associate of mine said, you know, Marcus Garvey, he had a lot of parades back in the 1920s. And he goes, Brother Yao, why don't you go ahead and start a parade for, you know, the UNIA and ACL convention back in 1991. And I said, wow, what a great idea. So I remember Marcus Garvey Jr., he was so proud and happy to be marching in that parade. Him, Dr. Tony Martin, Gene Slappy, many, many other members of the UNIA, because this is the time when the old, you know, folks and the old guard in the UNIA came out to Los Angeles in 1991. And in addition, you know, Marcus Garvey Jr. and I, we're both engineers, and we had the chance to work on something called the UNIA Solar Power Project. And we put together a prototype of that solar power project back in Los Angeles. And then myself and my father, another engineer, Nathan Christopher, and others, we went over to Ghana back in 1991, I think it was, right after that convention. And we met with the Ministry of Energy, the Ministry of Mines and Energy, putting forward that UNIA project. And I think Crystal had the chance to go down to see and be part of the memorial for Marcus Garvey Jr. And I think Mrs. Garvey and Crystal talked about that time, talked about the fact that one time, Marcus Garvey Jr., he had our drawings. He had our drawings, our schematics, our specifications, and he was traveling. And then these drawings, these specifications of our solar power project was confiscated, and they were taken away from Mr. Marcus Garvey Jr. So that was one time I had a chance to interface. And then I was out in Orlando, Florida one time for the convention of the National Society of Black Engineers. And I said that, you know, Marcus Garvey Jr., his wife, Jean Garvey, they don't live too far from here. They live in West Palm Beach, you know, Florida. And my friend, he calls me his mentor, but he's older than me, but he has gravitated toward African consciousness. He said, I would like to meet Marcus Garvey Jr. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I said, it's 5-6 hour drive, but you know, we can do that. We have time in this convention. So I called Miss Jean Garvey, and Miss Jean Garvey said, sure, Brother Yao, you know, sure, Ambassador Yao, you can come down and we'll see you and we'll host you. So then myself and Kwame, Brother Kwame, we drove down and we got a chance to visit, you know, Marcus Garvey Jr. at his house. We got a chance to spend time with him and spend good time with him there. And you know, this has been interesting because I'm in Ghana right now, and I'm working to get the land that was given by a chief to Mrs. Mary Mason, a UNIA member who introduced me to Ghana back in 1987. So I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning every morning, and right now we're building a wall around that land. I'm spending $3,000 to $4,000 to build a wall, to me, which is a waste of money, but I need to do that because in Africa, if you want to preserve your land, you have to build a wall around it. Otherwise, people are going to trespass on it. So we had a gentleman, so us, you know, we know what duty is. This gentleman has been on the land for 20 years. He's been on the land that the UNIA member built. She built a red, black, and green lobster house on that land. So this gentleman, Alex DeFore, has been on the land for 20 years. So now it's my duty in honor of this Mary Mason, 4th Assistant President General of the UNIA, to continue her project and to maintain this land and to establish this land. So, you know, I'm up. So I was tired. And actually, I fell asleep, you know, about an hour ago. And then another thing that happened, this young brother, he came over here and we're putting on a Black History Month program in our town in Palm. And this brother, he passed away. He passed away yesterday, actually. Okay. So what I'm saying to people, and all of you know this, because all of you are old guard. If you have a chance to get to know somebody, if you have a chance to talk to somebody, if you have a chance to get them to know you deeply, if they open up and you can know them deeply, do what you can to know them deeply, because you don't know when the next time they're going to be here. You don't know when the next time you're going to talk with them. So then, you know, I fell asleep. And then a friend of mine, what I call my cultural integration specialist here in Ghana, she helps to translate for me. She helps me to navigate the police. I had to go to the police to report trespassers on our land. She called me. And she said, oh, the young brother passed away, African-American brother. And another thing about Africa is that if you're feeling sick, if you're feeling like you have a problem, take it seriously. Go to the hospital, go to the clinic, take care of yourself, because this is no game over here. This is no trick over here. You have to be serious over here in Africa. If you don't, you could die, okay? So she woke me up. And then I woke up and I said, you know, oh, wow, I'm supposed to be on this program. I'm supposed to be talking about, you know, the Honorable Marcus Garvey Jr. So then Spirit woke me up. And then I said, let me log on. I know it's late, but, you know, in Africa, you get to understand what African time is. And African time it's a time, and you are going to be wherever you are, whenever you get there. And Africans who are ministers and Africans who are prime ministers, they know about African time, because the crowds, the traffic and everything in Africa is so darn hard and it's so darn tough, so that they know you're going to be late. So then Spirit told me, I didn't worry about, you know, whether I'm going to be on or not. I said, hey, let me log on. I'm sure they're still going to be on. So the second chance I had a chance to spend a little good time with Marcus Garvey Jr. was when he came out, and I think that was in 1997, again to Los Angeles, California. And then at this time, I had given up the presidentship because, you know, we have to transition from UNIA divisions and teach other people how to be leaders in the UNIA. So then the next president was Roland Freeman. Roland Freeman was a Black Panther. And his brother, Ronald Freeman, another Black Panther. They said, Marcus Garvey Jr. is coming to Los Angeles. We have Marcus Garvey Jr. Day in Los Angeles. And then these brothers, one lived up in Oakland, California. So Marcus Garvey Jr. also had a chance to stay at my friend's house. and his name was Brother Sankofa. And Brother Sankofa was so proud to have Marcus Garvey Jr. stay in his house. He mentioned that, you know, very, very frequently. Yes, Marcus Garvey's son, he stayed at my house when we hosted him out in Los Angeles, California. And the Black Panther brothers, you know, these Black Panther brothers were in shootouts, the shootouts in South Central. This one brother, he got, you know, his leg got hurt because he got shot in his leg. So these brothers, they were in Africa, you know, what a bodyguard is a bodyguard is when you have hundreds of people around you. You are at your palace, you are holding court, you know, under a tree, but you're surrounded by hundreds of people. So they're guarding your body. They're guarding your body with their body. This is what a bodyguard is. This is what our emperors, Menelik, our empress Johannes in Ethiopia, they have bodyguards such as this. So these Black Panther bodyguards were Marcus Garvey Jr.'s bodyguards. They rented this nice, beautiful Lincoln. They drove from Los Angeles all the way up to Oakland, California. They were guarding, as some of the brothers and sisters said, our royalty. Marcus Garvey Jr., our royalty. Dr. Julius Garvey, our royalty, our princess. These are our princes right now. So that was the other aspect. And they drove up to Oakland, California, and Marcus Garvey Jr. did many talks up in Oakland, California too. And I just want to say we're honoring the Garvey family. We're honoring Marcus Garvey Jr. with the Marcus Garvey Bronze. And we are coordinating with the African Union to get the Marcus Garvey Bronze installed at the African Union. The African Union is having their heads of state meeting a week from today, February 6th and February 7th. And then the honorable mayor, the honorable president is going to announce the fact that we're putting this sculpture together. So in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but in my opinion, this is going to be the first gift of the African Americans, the African Caribbeans, and the African Brazilians to the African Union. This is our olive branch out to the African Union to make this sixth region real to the African Union and real to us. And you all have an opportunity to help us do that. And the artist of the sculpture, Nigel Benz, this is our second sculpture that we've made. Our first one was installed in 2016 at the Ethiopian Aviation Academy, a brother that helped start Ethiopian Airlines back in 1947. So this is going to be our second sculpture done by Nigel, a great artist out of Los Angeles. And Nigel said, you know, Brother Yao and our Marcus Garvey coordinating team, our Marcus Garvey Bronze coordinating team, he said, wouldn't it be nice to have a picture of the family of Marcus Garvey on that sculpture? So this is a family. Marcus Garvey is the head of our family. And we would like to see that photo. And that photo of the family, Marcus Garvey Jr. obviously is part of that family. So that photo, and Dr. Garvey has many, many photos. So this is something that we're doing, and this would be great, if we can make this happen, and it's happening really too. So I'm not going to talk too long. The last thing, I wanted to mention was that during the 1991 convention out in Los Angeles, California, Khalid Muhammad was our keynote speaker. Khalid Muhammad was our keynote speaker, and he challenged us. He challenged us as a UNIA. He says, be that great UNIA that Marcus Garvey had. He said, UNIA, rise up. He said, UNIA, unite your people. And this Marcus Garvey Bronze activity is a time where we can bring our people together. Unite, bring our people together to act as a unit, to act as one unit. We're sending videos of the president of Ghana talking about Marcus Garvey to Ethiopian Airlines. We're sending those to other ambassadors. These folks who do not know about Marcus Garvey and the UNIA are having a chance to learn about Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. This is the time the deputy chairperson and other senior staff at the AU told me we need to advocate. We need to talk with presidents and prime ministers and just the civil people, from the civil servants all the way up to others. And this is a time for us to advocate about Marcus Garvey. And that's what we're doing. And this is a great time for us to inform and broaden awareness about Marcus Garvey, not just the sculpture. So that's what we're doing. So Khalid Muhammad said, rise up, UNIA, be that UNIA that you were, and take your proud step. And Mr. Garvey said, you know, where are our kings? Where are our queens? Where are our men and women of big affairs? And where are our ambassadors? And that's what strived me to ask the prime minister of Ethiopia. I asked him, I said, I want to be an ambassador. And then I had a meeting with him. And he said, you know, okay, well, let me think about that. So Marcus Garvey, he put out, you know, actions and tasks for us to do. And I listened from the age of 12 all the way up. And then he said he made me the ambassador of tourism of Ethiopia, formally, officially that ambassador. And Dr. Garvey and many others are making me help to bring that even truer than true. So this is the legacy that Marcus Garvey left us. This is the legacy that Marcus Garvey Jr. left us. And now we, as a united people, as a unit, we need to leave our own legacy. And right now, you all can help us with the Marcus Garvey Bronze. So that's all I want to say. And I'd like to thank Spirit, and I'd like to thank all those who put this on for, you know, waking me up, you know, 30 minutes ago. I'm a Saganala.
We're going to bring Sister Crystal back to introduce, I believe, our next presenter, or our next presentation. Please. And we want to commend Sister Crystal for organizing this and putting all this together as well. Thank you to all the panelists, too. Wonderful conversation, wonderful presentations in memory of Marcus Garvey Jr. Sister Crystal.
Greetings, family. I just want to say thank you, Reverend Mark. You are a godsend. This was an amazing job on your part to pull this all together and make it seamless and make it flow. So thank you for all of the work that you've done today. So yes, thank you very much. So we're heading towards the end, family. I can't believe we're almost here, you know. But we've been talking so much about Marcus Jacques Garvey Jr. And I thought it might be apropos to actually share with the family a clip of Marcus Garvey Jr. It's from a while ago. It's from 1997. And actually, this is him at my uncle William Henry Jackson Bay's funeral in 1997. And so he delivered a speech there, and I will let him speak for himself. As you can see, that's something that we had to go back in the archives to get right. But at the same time, it just, when I said that Marcus Garvey Jr. was at my uncle's funeral in 1997, and he called him the Honorable William Henry Jackson Bey, this is the video that shows that that's what happened. And I got to tell you, it's just so amazing to me, because I know that there's, whatever you want to call it, spirit, God, the ancestors, the Netheru, the Orisha, whatever you want to call it, is working in the backgrounds and making things happen, even when you do not intend to make it happen. And so that's how I ended up being in the honored position of being able to go down to Florida and help with the UNIA ritual, and also to do this program. So thank you from my family, the Jackson family, Jackson Bey family, to the Garvey family for the love that you showed us here. And you have our love and our respect. So I just wanted to share that. And we're going to close also with some, have some final words from Mrs. Garvey Jr. And let me spotlight her. I'll take the spotlight off of me. All right, I think we have you. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Crystal. We started out with my, I was going to talk about Marcus's academic achievements, but I knew with the panel that they would all go into it. And most of you who know Marcus, who knew Marcus, knew that he was a very, very humble guy. So I thought I would just leave that to the panelists who knew him very well and knew of his academic accomplishments. So I just would like to close out by giving my thanks to Division 330, to you, Crystal, and to Brother Albeda, and also Reverend Thompson for co-hosting. I also want to give some credit to Mr. Duguay and Mr. Duncan. You've both been very well. And certainly to all the other distinguished panelists, my brother-in-law, to my friends Oliver Mayer and Dale Holness. I also would like to mention Reverend Willie Wilson, who gave us a lesson in history. And certainly, last but not least, my dear friends, the Jeffreys, Len and Ross. We were neighbors in Teaneck, and we were very close friends. And usually when I need a shoulder to cry on, I can always pick up my phone and speak with Dr. Jeffries. Also, I want to give great credit to Yah, who called in from Ethiopia. That was a gigantic effort on his part. I appreciate Duncan, who spends a lot of time in Liberia. It was great that you were able to join us in this. So my thanks to everyone who participated. Credit again to Division 330, and let's hope we can keep this alive and keep the UNIA certainly in the esteem in which it belongs. So thank you all, everyone, and thank you for your participation. Thank you, Crystal.
Those were beautiful words. Thank you so much for the legacy that you and your family have given us. We're going to do two more things, and then it'll be the end of the program. So one is that I'm going to bring on the Officer of Protocol, John Elbada, who's a member and a trustee of Division 330, so he can say a few words. There you go. I hear you. Okay, all right. Elbada, you're going to speak. He's on mute. So I'm asking you to unmute. There we go.
We're there?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, I want to first thank Dr. Julius Garvey for helping out and giving me permission to move forward. Second, I would like to thank Gene Garvey for giving me permission to do this. It was a pleasure. I want Brother President Duncan to know that we're all part of this royal family. Gene Garvey is Queen Mother, and we want to move this organization and keep it strong. Gene, I appreciate the love that was shared back and forth with the division, with Crystal and I when we was in Palm Beach, West Palm Beach. I want to close out. I don't want to take no more time. We did a good job pushing. Mark, you're wonderful. And I just want to end this. Gene, you're wiping your eyes. What are you doing? It's all good for us. And I'm going to keep up with you. We're not going to just stay strong. We're going to keep this going, and you're going to be a part of it. Thank you for your love, and thank Dr. Garvey. Dr. Jeffrey is a warrior. We're going to all keep moving. Thank you.
All right. Okay. And thank you, Baba El Bader, so this was your vision, and I hoped, but it was your vision, and it all came together because of all of the guests that participated and agreed, because the legacy of Marcus Garvey Jr. and of course Marcus Messiah Garvey is just this great. And so the last thing we're going to do is go ahead and close out with a bit of jazz, because that's what the band Pure Elegance wanted to leave us with. And so that's what we're going to leave you with. Okay. So I think it's too choppy, yeah. But that was what they wanted to give as their love offering for this program, and we'll make sure that a better version is available for everyone here. So we just want to say thank you one more time. Thank you, family. This is a family, and we love and appreciate all of you. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute, and everyone can. Let's see. Say hi if you like.
Hello, Sister Crystal, and and greetings to all. This is a wonderful program.
This is Brother Charles, the Minister of Education for the HEC and also a member of Division 330 as a trustee. I want to thank Sister Crystal for her hard work. I want to thank Brother Michael Duncan for coming in and talking and speaking on behalf of the entire UNIACL, as well as Brother Duguay and all the other members who have come in and spoke so well. Can't name everybody because we'd have a whole nother program, but thanks to everyone for coming in and participating.
Good evening.
I just want to send my condolences to Sister Jean Garvey and Brother Julius Garvey. And I put in the chat, Julius, that I really appreciate you talking about how your mother was the one also who did the injecting of the information and kept you all going, because a lot of times your mother isn't honored for the work that she did in terms of keeping your father's legacy alive. And I just want to send out, we want to send out our condolences to your family. And I'm Laureen Butler, a member of Division 330. And thank you. And I'm so good seeing you, Brother Massamela. I haven't seen you in quite a while.
I'm trying to figure out how I have visibly aged and you and Charles have not. That's what I'm trying to figure out right now. We'll talk about that after this, though. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. This is Kevin Miller with Ethiopian Anthem. I want to thank everyone for listening and enjoying the music. It worked out the way God wanted it to work out. We didn't have a drummer at first, and God sent us a drum. We was going to kind of really do it organic, where we're just going to, real jazz it out. A drummer happened to just come, and we were able to work it out. And I want to thank Sister Crystal and Brother Dar for having us. It was a wonderful experience. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is the end of the program. Good night, family.
Good night, Sister Crystal.
Medasi to y'all. Love everyone. So God good bless. To see everyone. Praying God with you and for you, Mother Jean. Praying with you and for you, Queen Jean. We'll be there for you.
We absolutely appreciate being a part of the program from Poetic Music. Thank you so much. And God bless the Garvey family.
God bless you. Keep you in our prayers.